Out of the gates and ready to go. Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow is underway from 6th and Peabody with E-Hop Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. The Wednesday edition. Thanksgiving Eve has arrived. We're ready. Let's have a show, Chad.
It's a good day to have a show.
It is. Got a great weekend coming up, too.
Oh, we do.
Long weekend, plenty of food, and football. We'll be previewing it all. Trey Wallace joins us coming up in 20 minutes. Big games on tap. Rivalry weekend is here for college football. Trey with OutKick.com joins us in 20. We've got primary complaint as well. Plus Clay Travis each and every Wednesday. Has he made it to the beach home yet? Probably.
That's a good question.
He's either going now or right after Thanksgiving.
Is he a beach home for Thanksgiving?
Yeah,
guy?
I know he's headed there, yeah.
Okay.
Question is when. We'll find out.
You never know with Clay's world travels.
Right.
He could be in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. He could be at his beach home. He could be overseas.
Yes.
You never quite know where he's going to turn up.
On the seas or on land. Who
That's
knows?
right, yeah. It's on his yacht.
No doubt. Coming up, he'll give us his preview and prediction for Ohio State and Michigan. Looking forward to that. Top 10 games of the college football weekend. We know number 1 on Chad's list. We don't know 2 through 10. We will
What if
find
I just
that
had
out.
the ultimate shocker and the number 1 game
The
was
Egg
not
Bowl.
Ohio State, Michigan? And I'm like, guys, no one's talking about this, but Texas, San Antonio, Tulane is going to be my number 1. It's not. It's not. Now, it is in the top 10. Little spoiler there. I'll say that game is in my top 10, but not the number 1 game. We all know what the number 1 game is.
Andrea Kremer joins us, one of our top guests over the years of this show. She's with us in the 2 hours from right now, top of the 3rd hour. And Chad, she had her final Real Sports episode last night with Jim Irsay, which is, I mean, if you didn't know about Jim Irsay behind the scenes, this is something to watch because it explains everything and shows you what the guy's like behind, not even behind closed doors.
Well,
very out front.
The news,
crazy.
Yeah, the newsworthy thing that every outlet's picked up now, we'll talk to Andrea about, is in the interview, he says that in 2014 when he got pulled over for driving under the influence, that he got charged with the crime and pulled over because the local cops are prejudiced to white billionaires.
Yeah.
And Andrea, Andrea's fantastic, by the way. But in the piece, she says, Jim, you know what that sounds like. You know the reaction. He said, I don't give a damn what it sounds like. It's the truth. I'm speaking the truth. People are prejudiced against white billionaires. And, of course, it goes to Bryant Gumbel in the post-piece wrap-up. And the first question he asked about that. Yeah. And it says, I'm real surprised you went there first. With this whole interview, but we'll ask her about that. And
he says it was a hip surgery, which is just also funny.
And also the health and state of Jim Irsay is not just visibly watching the guy, listening to him talk, watching him try to walk around. It looks rough for a 64-year-old man.
He's the Charlie Sheen of the NFL ownership.
Yeah, he sounds and looks like a guy moving around that's in his 90s. Not 64. So we'll ask her about a lot of those things. And also the end of an era, 29 years of Real Sports on HBO starting in 1995. And that was the last new material show. They're going to have a comprehensive look back at all the years of the show in, I think, December 17th is when that show will first air on HBO. But we'll talk to one of the all-time greats about being a part of that show and her Jim Irsay piece, which is the biggest newsmaker from the last episode.
We'll also preview the top NFL games in every NFL game for Week 12. But, Chad, we've got to jump into the game, the matchup. For the 3rd straight meeting, we will see Ohio State and Michigan ranked in the top 5, each team. And here we go with you've got the top 5 programs, 2 of the top 5, with a significance this year that trumps any potential magnitude of a rivalry matchup that I can remember in recent years, maybe ever, based on the result, but also how it impacts both teams and the impact of the college football playoff, plus the perception of one program over the other.
It is an existential crisis of a game on both sidelines for this one. Both Jim Harbaugh and Ryan Day were asked this week if they respect the other coach, and both completely dodged the question. They wouldn't answer it one way or the other. They said, we're preparing our teams. We're getting ready for the game. I'm not worried about stuff like that. Jim Harbaugh got this started when, after he won for the first time in 2021, said you got a coach over there that acts like he hit a home run when he was born on third base with Ryan Day. There's no coming back from that. When you are a coach that worked their way up and someone says that about you because you inherited Urban Meyer's program, I don't think there's a lot of coming back from that with Ryan Day towards Jim Harbaugh. And now you've got Ryan Day allegedly leading the charge in an investigation into this illegal sign stealing operation with Michigan. These two coaches do not respect each other. Bo Schembechler and Woody Hayes respected each other in this rivalry. They hated each other. They spent 364 days a year trying to figure out a way to beat the other one. But at the end of the day and at the end of a life, Bo Schembechler eulogized Woody Hayes when he died. The last time this game remotely came close to having this much meaning was 2006. It was billed the game of the century. 1 versus 2, both undefeated. Chad Henne in Michigan versus Ohio State and Troy Smith, the eventual Heisman Trophy winner. Ohio State won that game at home 52-49 in what was an epic game. Bo Schembechler died the day before the game. In part, doctors believe because his cardiovascular disease was irritated because of his anticipation of that game. All of that surrounded that game, Hutton, and it doesn't come close to matching the meaning and the hype behind this game. In one corner, you have Ohio State, who is playing for a chance against a program they hate and a head coach they hate, everything they stand for. That head coach is not on the sideline. If you win this game, the self-worth of all Ohio State people will be revived. And they will say, see, they did it because they were cheating. The whole time, they did it because they were cheating. Now they can't cheat against us. We're the better team and we won. In Michigan's corner, if they win, and they're a 3-point favorite in this game, they say, see, overblown, doesn't matter. Can't do any of the scouting now. Everyone's changed their signals. Look what happened again. 3rd straight year, same result. No, by the way, we don't even need our head coach to beat that team down south. Don't even need it. We're the better program. This is true rivalry. This is not shaking hands after the game. This is not coaching staffs that like and respect each other. There is a true hatred. There's always been a hatred between the fans. That hatred usually is more of a fan thing than a coach thing and a player thing. It is a coach and player thing now. There's no respect between the two men that lead this program at all. There's no respect between the players. And this leads to, Hutton, I think, the greatest Ohio State-Michigan game, at least in anticipation of all time.
And think about the other storylines, too. J.J. McCarthy grew up a Buckeyes fan. Wanted to play there. Ends up at Michigan. Blake Corum didn't play in this game a year ago. Stood on the sidelines. You know, it was kind of ballied about on whether or not he was going to play. It turns out Michigan didn't need him that day either. And consider what Michigan did to Ohio State in Columbus. Their first win there in, 20 years, where in this rivalry, the home team dominates over the last, since 1989, 21-11-1 is the record of the home team in this rivalry. Even more significant is when they're matched up in top 5 matchups in the polls, the home team is 10-3 in the last 13 meetings. But last year, on the road, Michigan went, and in 6 plays, they put up over 500 yards of total offense. 6 plays of the game accounted for nearly 380 yards of that offense. What is this game like? Just on the field, the magnitude is incredible. And I was laughing to myself thinking about the Tony Petitti. You know, the commissioner should be at this game, right?
Should be.
Is it a violation of the sportsmanship policy if you don't shake hands at the end of the game? Again, it's tongue-in-cheek, but
I don't
sportsmanship
think so.
Policy is what they've deemed Michigan for.
Yeah.
And here they are with so much. I mean, if Michigan wins.
If there's a fight or something after, then yeah, absolutely, because they sususpended Juwan Howard for 3 games.
Right, that's right.
For getting into it in the handshake
But
line.
I'm joking about the handshake stuff there. But, what's the post-game presser like? If Sherrone Moore is going to cry after a win against Penn State, what's that interview like after Ohio State? And even better,
both sides.
What is Ryan Day like at the podium in a loss?
I'm telling you,
win?
This game defines self-worth for both these programs. That sounds extreme to some, but it's defining who these programs are. Because Ohio State has accused Michigan of these things. It's looking like it's true. And they believe they're cheaters. And then that's a big reason why they've been the better team the last couple of years. They can disprove that. Michigan can in this game, right?
Yep.
They've changed their signs. You figured out our scheme, and we still beat you without our head coach. That is damning for Ohio State and for Ryan Day. Ryan Day starts to suffer from John Cooper disease at that point with 3 straight losses and not being able to get over the hump. For 2 teams that are undefeated, 2nd and 3rd in the country, it feels even bigger than that. And that everything, this is a win and end scenario to the Big Ten championship game, but just intrinsically in these programs and what it says for both fan bases, for what they're going to claim, for what they're going to say, it's the biggest, most anticipated matchup in the greatest rivalry in college football. It's not the Iron Bowl. It is Ohio State-Michigan. This is the best rivalry in college football. And I think part of it is now that you have legitimate hatred, lack of respect between 2 coaches. I'm not saying that's always a good thing for it to reach this point, because Woody Hayes and Bo Schembechler in the 10-year war from 69 to 70, that was pretty good too. And those guys actually liked each other off the field and respected each other, but there was a hatred between the teams and programs. I'm not saying that it's a great thing for both these schools, but it's where we are right now, and it leads to what is a highly anticipated game.
Chad, I want to get to the NFL in a moment. Let's look at the college football playoff rankings here, because the only change we saw last night was with Washington jumping up to 4, and the first 2 out right now, the 5 and 6th ranked teams. Florida State falls to 5, which – again, they have been alluding to this, and even without the injury to Jordan Travis, I was mentioning, like, that when you hear them say that Washington's very close with Florida State, the only conceivable way that you can see them jumping is last week, where Florida State's facing North Alabama, and we see Washington go on the road and win at Oregon State. Georgia, Ohio State, Michigan remain your top 3. Oregon is at 6. I can't help but look at the top 6 here and think, if Michigan beats Ohio State, where does that put Ohio State in the committee's eye? Does it put them at 5? Do they fall beneath Florida State and then that Florida State's in? What happens with Oregon as well in all of this? Because Oregon is really good. And we've really pinpointed in the Big Ten 3 games. And it's Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan, Penn State, and now this one. And how much of an impact could that have on Ohio State? Because I think the focus has been on, if Michigan loses, they're out of the top 4, right? And then they're not making their way back in. That would be the way that Michigan doesn't get into the college football playoff, based on everything that's happened off the field. The committee's not going to look at it. The loss will speak for itself. But what about the Buckeyes, Chad? The importance of just winning this game. This is a true playoff game, I think, for both, because I think the Buckeyes would be out too.
Yeah, I mean, there is a chaos scenario where
I'm not factoring in the other losses.
All that.
That's fair.
It is a playoff game for the Big Ten championship. The winner goes to Indianapolis. The loser doesn't. So it's a chance to win one title from one of these winners. I usually root for chaos. I got to be honest. I'm rooting for 4 13-0 teams in the playoff. I'd love to see that once. I'd love to see it just play out where it's very clear who the 4 best teams are, and it's all the undefeated conference champions.
We'd love that
are going into the playoff. And for the last year of this, before we get into a 12-team playoff next year, where, oh, by the way, Iowa would be in that 12-team playoff right now. Before we get to that, I'd love to see a year where it's 4 13-0 conference champions battling it out.
And we're headed to the 12-team playoff. Here's what it would look like right now. With the 4 byes, the top-ranked schools from the Power 5, Georgia, Ohio State, Washington, and then you would have Florida State get the bye. Even though they're number 5, they get the bye, again, before this week is played out. First-round matchups. Missouri's on the road in Tuscaloosa to take on Alabama. Tulane would visit the Big House in Michigan. Penn State against Oregon. And Louisville in Austin to take on the Texas Longhorns. This is awesome.
Yeah, and it's what and again, you add that, we're talking about the possible scenarios for teams that could make their way into the 14 playoff. Now think about all that group of teams that could be looking at these last couple of weeks and thinking about ways they could get in to a 12-team playoff and what that looks like.
Yeah.
And how many more teams you add to that playoff excitement is going to be a great thing for the sport.
Chad, and just the debate for 13 and 14, 15, and it's really about 12, the debate for 12, because Tulane gets in as the highest-ranked non-Power 5 school. James Madison falling off helps that debate, right?
Yeah.
This year, anyway.
Tough loss for James Madison.
They've ended their attempt,
appeal.
Yeah, their attempt for any of that. But I prefer the debate we have next year, not this year, I prefer the magnitude of rivalry weekend this year compared to next year. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because it does take a little bit of the shine off, not just a little, a lot of the shine off of this weekend, the Thanksgiving weekend of rivalry weekend. And if you have someone, if you were trying to introduce someone to college football, or someone that's on the fence of, I love the NFL more, this is the game to turn on and watch.
Well,
Michigan,
this is
period.
it. And
it doesn't get better than this.
I'll run through my top 10, but there's some other scenarios out there in the top 10 that you're going to want to tune into and watch also, because there's some great opportunities for some teams to salvage a season, to wreck another season. It's going to be fun. And I'm with you, because it gives you added playoff games.
Yes.
It feels like with Ohio State, Michigan, whereas we know both teams are in a 12-team playoff regardless after this game, and they could meet up again. Makes it that much more special this Saturday.
Is there a rivalry where the other school refuses to mention the other school's name?
Probably. I can't think of one off the top of my head, though.
Yeah,
what my favorite...
Alabama sings a song in the fourth quarter that mentions Auburn's name,
Do you know what my favorite name for a rivalry game is after doing some research this morning? Farmageddon, which is Iowa State, Kansas State.
Farmageddon?
The name of the series is Farmageddon. Now, that is fantastic.
Ben Affleck there, too.
I thought about including them in the top 10 just for that name. Farmageddon. Yeah. Liv Tyler and Ben Affleck will be at the game.
Trey Wallace joins us. He jumps in the mix for the top college football matchups this weekend. That's next on Hot Mic.
The rest of the world doesn't know this. I have a day drinking day that I have at the owners meeting, and it's Mike Tomlin and I throw it, and it's only for head coaches and GMs. No other media is allowed to come, and the media over time has given us respect. Like, this is Glazer's thing. Let's not go there. And it's usually Tomlin and I and upwards of 30 other guys. It's crazy. But what I also do is I always tell Tomlin and whoever the older coaches are, tell these young cats what's about to come across your desk, because they have no idea. Like, the craziest stories in the world, and you're not prepared for it. Because when you're in that position, you really find out how messed up everybody is. Like, it's not just your players, it's your coaches, it's your scouts, it's your GMs, it's the person in the cafeteria, it's everything. And then it's their family and the issues families are calling. And oh my God. And listen, these cats didn't go to school for this. They didn't go to school to be a psychiatrist. Right? They went in coaching to coach. Right. But when you're a head coach or a GM, that's part of the job. The other part is really, it all lands on your shoulders. So I make Tomlin and all the other guys tell the craziest stories that have come across their desk in the early days to prepare the new guys.
Well, and also probably to help normalize everybody else, right? Because we all probably live our lives thinking, oh my God, no one could understand, or no one life is as crazy as mine, or as messed up as mine. And then you hear someone else's story, you're like, wait a second, you have me beat. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there's a couple, and I can't tell them on this, that are there are we go to them. We usually start these fun days off with these couple stories that there's no way I'll ever repeat, but they are like, Charlie, if you said to me, hey, if I told you any of them, you'd say, come on, you made this up. There's no way this could be possible. And the craziest thing about the NFL is that anything's possible. When we did Ballers, people are like, come on, that stuff doesn't happen in the NFL. I'm like, this is a G-rated version of what happens in the NFL. Are you kidding me?
Okay, you just took me to literally the best segue, because something I remember you saying, and I remember you saying it a few times, the NFL is truly the greatest reality show in the world.
Can't make it up.
And that is what you're talking about, is a testament to exactly why. I mean, there's all these stories that happen, and they're not scripted stories. Yeah.
Look at the Raiders this week. They fired their head coach and general manager at 10 o'clock at night and put in ex-Giant linebacker Antonio Pierce to run the team. Like, look at last year with the Colts. They put in Jeff Saturday. Like, you can't make it up, right? So it's just like, it's great because even for me, like I said, with these things, like, I think I've seen it all. There was something that happened this year. I said, man, we've seen it all. And then this happened. I don't remember I can't remember what it was.
If you think about it, just
okay. Yeah, I can't remember what it was. But they're like, man, we've seen everything. And then this thing popped up just when you thought you've seen everything. And you really like, that's the thing. If and I've been around, by the way, this is my 30th year, right? Is that, I don't know. Yep. 31st year. It's my 31st year. My 20th year at Fox. I started covering the league for the New York Post in 95. So that would make it like, but I started earlier in 93. So that's 31 years. So 95, was it 29 years covering the league. Yeah. So I've seen it all. I've been around. I think I've seen it all, for the most part. The stuff that's been reported and stuff that hasn't been reported. And yet every year there are still things that surprise me.
Sixth and Peabody, our location, Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Hot Mic with Hutton Withrow rolls on across the OutKick network. Chad, we know your number one game. It's everyone's number one game, Ohio State and Michigan. Trey Wallace joins us. We'll be certainly writing his opinion and coverage of all things Wolverines and Buckeyes. Trey at OutKick.com. Trey, happy Thanksgiving to you, man.
Guys, happy holidays, happy Thanksgiving. Hope everybody is getting prepared for some football and some turkey. And don't forget, we got the Egg Bowl tomorrow night as well. It's a nice one.
No doubt. We'll get your thoughts on that in a moment. What's just your gut feeling about what happens on Saturday for Big Noon kickoff and Michigan hosting Ohio State?
Man, like the guys, like this is one of those games where I feel like Michigan is going to win, but then it's hard to put a prediction on this one because look, if Michigan's defense, gets beat by Marvin Harrison Jr. down the field and the Ohio State defense shows up, and we've seen over the last 2 weeks that J.J. McCarthy really hasn't thrown the ball much. And they struggled against Maryland. And it's one of those things where I know it's at home, but all that chatter, and I think, I asked somebody this the other day, who's the pressure on here? Is it on Ryan Day and Ohio State to, end this little streak that's going on here? Or is it Michigan to finally say, okay, screw the rest of the country and what's going on right now. We're going to a Big Ten championship. We'll probably end up winning it. And Tony Petitti is going to have to hand us the trophy. Like, it's so back and forth between who this pressure is really on here. And it's hard to give a prediction right now. I'm going to wait till the final injury reports come out and whatnot, but I'm just excited for this game. I'm excited for all the build up to it. And I hope it lives up to what everybody is saying. And we'll be there on Saturday covering it. OutKick will. So it's going to be a good time.
Yeah. Florida State, Florida. I don't know how much of a good time it's going to be. Two backup quarterbacks going head to head in this one. Such a weird, and this is just a testament to the fickle nature of sports at times and where a program is headed. You feel like with Florida and Billy Napier, if they just win close games against Missouri and Arkansas and close it out, we think very differently about Billy Napier and the direction of that program, the recruiting class and everything else. But they don't win those games. And now they're playing to avoid a third straight losing season at Florida, and the first two being losing seasons for Billy Napier. But, Trey, I feel like they have a chance in this game. The less than a touchdown underdog at home. They've got their backup quarterback, but so does Florida State. What do you think about this game and what it means for Billy Napier? And obviously we know what it means for Florida State, a chance to possibly play for a national championship.
Yeah, biggest game in I think Billy Napier's tenure so far at Florida. I think when you've got Florida State up against the ropes, I guess you could say, because Jordan Travis is not involved, and Florida State will have to play with Tate Rodemaker at backup quarterback. By the way, great college football name. And then I got to see Tate play a little bit against North Alabama, but I got to see Max Brown, backup quarterback for Florida, play against Missouri, and him, playing in, midway through the third quarter, the fourth quarter against Missouri, being able to lead Florida on drives and have a chance to win it there at the end. I just look, everything has gone wrong in Gainesville over the last 2 years. I think that this game right here sets yourself up where you don't have an off season, full of, you're going to have people talking in general about the direction of the program, rightfully so. But I think this gives Billy Napier, okay, we just knocked off our rival. We got to 6 wins. We'll probably end up playing in the Birmingham Bowl or something like that. Whatever, when it comes down to it, you also beat the number 5 team in the country. And I think you need that juice going into the offseason. They do. I mean, I know recruiting is where it is right now, guys, but let's be honest with each other here. You get beat up in this game. Other coaches are coming after your recruits over these last 2 to 3 weeks that were in this, and things could go south pretty quick. So to keep the program stable, you need a win like this. And it's going to be tough because, look, Florida State still got Keon Coleman, you got Jared Verse. I mean, they've got players on their football team. So this is going to be a really, really tough matchup for them. But I do think it opens the opportunity to kind of, I don't want to say quiet the naysayers up, but you just hit it, Chad. Like, they lost a close game at Missouri where they should have won it. The defense would have just not folded at the end. The Arkansas game, should have won the Arkansas game, making a field goal. That would have been over. So you're right. It would be a different conversation right now compared to where we're sitting. So beating the Seminoles, I think it's Friday night, if I'm not mistaken, or Saturday night.
Saturday night, yep.
Saturday night. It ups the ante when it comes to what's going on in Gainesville. And also, I'm not going to say it gets people off his back, but it does be like, okay, maybe Billy can get this thing going in the right direction. Because if not, you guys know this, next year, it's hot seat year for Billy Napier. And it's crazy to say, but you need results quick in college football.
Trey Wallace with us here, and you can read his great work at OutKick.com. Check out the Trey Wallace podcast as well. We're all expecting craziness, right? Like topsy-turvy weekend. And we haven't seen that yet. Sometimes we have seen it by now. If we're going to see the shock and awe at the end of the college football season, what do you think is most likely the game where that occurs?
So I was going back and forth in my head last night on how we're going to get to the crazy playoff spot and how we were going to get some teams in compared to the other. I think it would come first off. Texas would get knocked out in the Big 12 title game by maybe Oklahoma State or something like that. I think Oregon, the situation with Oregon right there is if Oregon beats Washington in the Pac-12 championship, and then you've got the one-loss Washington team and the Oregon team, and you got to figure out how you're going to handle that. That's just one part. To the second part. And then, a little crazy, what if Alabama beats Georgia by a field goal or a touchdown? And now you got to make the decision. Okay, well, wait a minute. You can't jump Alabama over if Texas won. You can't jump Alabama over Texas. You got to put Georgia somewhere. Does this knock them out? Like, that's where the crazy. I don't think this weekend is where you're going to see a lot of movement. I think Ohio State, Michigan, yes, certainly.
Sure.
One of them are going to knock each other out. Obvious. Okay, Oregon State. The best thing that could happen for Washington in the Pac-12 is Oregon State beats Oregon on Saturday in the Civil War. Just knock them out, get Oregon out of the way. And then I think you can maybe land the plane smoothly when it comes to some of these other teams trying to get in. Because in my honest opinion, and I know they're playing with a backup quarterback, but if Florida State beats Florida on Saturday night in Gainesville, then turns around and goes and takes care of Louisville in the ACC title game, and I don't care if they win that game 10-7, as long as they win that football game, it is very hard to keep an undefeated ACC champion out of the college football playoff. You have to put them in. You cannot take this precedent and this stand now. And where it would get really crazy, guys, is if Florida State is undefeated, Washington's hanging around, but if Georgia takes an L, and then maybe if we get a little bit of craziness in the Big Ten title game or even the Pac-12 title game. But I think it all gets set up. I think it all gets set up by what happens with Texas Big 12 title game first, and then we see what happens between Oregon and Washington, and then we watch everything else kind of fold.
Egg Bowl tomorrow night, Trey. You mentioned it. Ole Miss at Mississippi State. Where is where are the heads of the Mississippi State players right now? without their head coach going into this game. And we see this trend more and more that it's important to get rid of the coach if you know it earlier so you can get ahead of everything else. Where is Mississippi State in terms of interviewing or finding their next head coach? And do they have a chance to pull off the shocker at home?
Just like any other big time rivalry game, I don't care if your record is 3-8 on the season. It's going to be a war tomorrow night. And look, I'm excited. We've all watched these Egg Bowls go down the last couple of years. It's been absolutely insane. But I think from Mississippi State's standpoint, Will Rogers going to give this thing a go. Going to try to play and try to throw Lane Kiffin's defense off a little bit. I know what we've seen. I don't know if Jackson Dart's going to be real healthy enough to go 4 quarters against Mississippi State. So this game to me is going to be, I think, a classic Egg Bowl because Zach Arnett's not there. You got to think about this too. With Zach Arnett anymore not there, you kind of let Will Rogers loose. Just let him do his thing that he was doing under Mike Leach. Like, let him loose. Throw the ball 40 times, okay? Let's try to catch Lane Kiffin and them off guard a little bit here. I think overall with the search and where we're at right now, I don't think Jamie Chadwell is going to be the coach at Mississippi State. I think when you look at some of the candidates out there, I keep hearing the name Barry Odom in talking with some folks. I think he is a candidate right now. You look what UNLV is doing. 9-3 on the season. They're putting 40,000 fans into Allegiant Stadium in LA. Like, it's just, is it time for him to come back home? Yeah, I mean, there's some other small time candidates out there, and no disrespect to any of them, but if you're not going with Jamie Chadwell and you kind of cut that off, I think you just got to pick up the phone and say, okay, Barry Odom, what do you want to do? You want to come back? You can run the defense here. We know you're good. Let's get an offensive coordinator that can, not look like Mike Leach and all that mess, but also be able to actually look decent on that side of the ball compared to what Mississippi State did this year, guys, because you've all seen it. They completely just changed the offense, and they didn't do it for their quarterback that is a passer who throws the ball 40 times. So very interested to see where that lands. Also did talk with somebody around the Texas A&M football program. They hope to have a hire done by next week. So this thing is kind of picking up steam a little bit. And I think Ross Bjork lands it sometime next week. You have to remember the transfer portal opens the Sunday following championship Saturday. So we're 10 days away from complete anarchy, as Mike Elko liked to say, with the transfer portal.
Speaking of the portal, maybe Deion Sanders is more like Dabo Swinney than I ever realized, because he's saying, hey, a kid is not even faithful to his girlfriend anymore. You give a commitment and then you go on another recruiting visit. You're not faithful. And then he's also mentioning that Colorado's not going to be an ATM. Deion's the one coach that can say that and still pull recruits. Am I wrong?
You're not wrong, but do you actually believe it? Like, that's my biggest thing is I'm sorry, I just don't believe it. I know that Travis Hunter came in, Kwamani McLean came in. I get what Shador is doing. They're building themselves off NIL, and I completely understand right when they get there. My biggest thing is, if you want to be competitive in college football, especially, don't forget, they're moving to Big 12. You want to be competitive in college football, you got to be able to dive into the NIL game. And it's just obvious. What is Colorado going to be able to offer you besides Deion Sanders being there in terms of, back in NIL deal?
So it would just be a national television presence and game day and big noon kickoff there, each and both at the same time, plus Aflac commercials where Shador's friends can be on the commercial with you.
Yeah, and I think it's two different things we're talking about. Like, he's saying, I'm not going to go buy people, but you're going to have all these opportunities. I'm sure they're being told that when they're on campus, given their profile now. But we know this about Dan. He's not going to suck up to anybody.
Right.
Especially high school kids. So I don't think he's going to play that game of, well, let's get you over here with our NIL collective and see how much we can get you to keep you away from going to this school. I think he's going to tell them to get out if they start doing that. He's going to tell them what they can do and what he's done with his other players. And
you're right, Trey. He's saying, hey, don't come here to get rich. Come here. Don't come here because you just want the payday now. Come here and then get rich, and we'll handle the business stuff on the back end.
In many ways, he is refreshingly old school.
Well,
Yeah.
he is. And I think it's great for college football. I do. And I completely understand what you're talking about when it comes to television and whatnot. But a lot of these players right now in the transfer portal, you can put them on television 12 times a year. They still want some of the bag. Like they want to
Sure.
be able to cash in. I'm not talking about high school recruiting. I'm talking about the portal, where if you're going to go out and you're going to find yourself a 5-star offensive lineman who has been playing in college football for 3 years and can start immediately, you're going to have to open it up a little bit and probably give them a little something on the side besides NIL. I just think, so.
Or they get the
when it
4-star
comes to-
tackle who's a backup, who doesn't want to be backup anymore.
Right. You're going to have to do a little bit of something. So I think NIL, yeah, it helps. But some of these guys, you have to remember, they're juniors and seniors. They only got a year or two left of eligibility. They want to be able to cash in now, make a little money. Don't know what the future looks like. I do think we're going to see a little bit of wackiness when it comes to Colorado again
Yes.
in the transfer portal. That's not going to be surprising. But at the end of the day, I think Dion and what Colorado can do to sell the program and sell the player, I agree with you. It'll help them once they get on campus. The key thing is you got to get them on campus first.
Trey Wallace covers all things college campus. You can catch out all the football coverage this weekend, OutKick.com.
He'll be all over it at OutKick.
It's going to be fun, Trey.
weekend.
And look forward to checking out the Trey Wallace podcast as well. Happy Thanksgiving to you and the fam.
Guys, happy Thanksgiving. I really appreciate you guys. And check out our coverage. We'll be in Ann Arbor starting on Friday, and we'll have everything covered from our end. Michigan, Ohio State this weekend. So thank you,
Thankful
boys.
for you, Trey Wallace. We're thankful for you, sir.
Enjoy
Thank
it.
you.
Thank you, Trey. There's Trey
Love you,
Wallace.
boys. Thank you.
Speaking of the portal and seniors and juniors on the move, Dave Clawson at Wake Forest had something to say about Sam Hartman at Notre Dame and Senior Day.
What you're experiencing is the bold taste of a Southern legend. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey, authentic Tennessee mountain-style spirits. We believe in crafting flavors that were born from tradition but defy expectation. And pioneering a new experience with every sip. Because if it doesn't do this, it ain't this. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Come on.
Welcome into OutKick the show. I am Clay Travis, your fearless leader.
I am going to continue to argue that sports is one of the great unifying forces in all of American life.
ESPN is a sinking ship. Democrats are now the party of the white, woke college graduate.
We live in a land of participation trophies.
You gotta lean into the turns. You really gotta lean into the turns.
When Leah Thomas walked in that first day, it got silent, and every girl was uncomfortable.
Very difficult to go back-to-back years in the NFL with the number 1 overall pick.
Is it fair for people to be upset with Barbie?
I've been out of LA long enough to have forgotten that libs, no matter how ridiculous the scenario, are gonna live. Another week of inflation, another week with Biden with COVID, and another set of losers to crown. People don't watch the WNBA on TV, in person, on a plane, on a train, on a bus, or on purpose. I mean, what have you seen firsthand of how this has affected you in the plant and your fellow employees? Under Joe Biden, the Taliban has retaken Afghanistan. Putin has invaded Ukraine. So if there was ever a time for freaking aliens to inhabit and conquer Earth, now would be that time.
We've seen coaches throw water bottles. We've seen coaches act like idiots. We've seen coaches slap other coaches. But I think if you're involved in carjacking, you're inherently a rotten human being. The level of stupid that sometimes gets on our YouTube chat just gives me a headache. You're born a male, play with males. You're born a female, play with females. Don't at me about it. The American people are being cheated. We, ladies and gentlemen, are being cheated.
I made the call to end the Me Too movement. And today I'm going to continue making that case. And that's just a way to further taunt these women, to make them feel less than, to make them realize that this has just become a big joke. Deion Sanders is the Donald Trump of football.
We were directly impacted by the whole Leah Thomas thing, and we were able to see you guys on the ground with your signs supporting That was huge.
They were saying, oh, it's only 1 or 2. That's rubbish, and we all know that's rubbish. Once those trans-identifying males were able to succeed, it just encouraged others.
Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. A bold taste of the Southern Legend.
Chad, I just got the menu texted to me for Thanksgiving celebrations tomorrow.
Oh, I
Legit.
love that moment.
Legit.
Hutton. Love that moment when that can happen.
I mean, it's all. No one ever complains about the menu, right?
No. Do you buy what Bobby Carpenter was saying about
I thought about it.
needing to have 2 different meats in order to be a feast?
We have the 2 meats.
And I'm never going to forget that. And he's right. I never really thought of it that way, but to truly be a feast, you need at least 2 different kinds of meats. And 3 or 4 or 5 makes it an even bigger feast.
I go for the turkey over the ham first. What do you do?
Oh, I'm turkey. I am.
You get both though,
this
right?
time, and it's something about this time of year too. Like if it's a sandwich, I'm going ham over turkey. But if it's just the actual physical eating of the meat,
right.
then I'm turkey over ham. Turkey and gravy every time.
Chad, we are longtime opponents of just let's have a tribute video because player X is back in town for the first time, right? A salute to all of the great days of this average player who left in free agency for millions. And
we want to be sparing with it. We're not anti all the time. There are times where it's warranted, you need to do it, but not all the time.
Not just because you paid a player and
he wasn't very good.
You paid him and he didn't improve based on the money you gave him, right? He was still the same guy. Well, this is a bit different from the collegiate ranks, but I think we're going to see more of this. So Dave Clawson in the preseason at Wake Forest was complaining about those that were trying to poach, that were recruiting his roster through NIL, offering, and I think he tallied up all the offers of guys who had stayed but turned down the in-season recruiting that had gone on with his roster last year. And he said it was roughly several $100,000 is what he threw out there. He was referring to, and at least I had, based on the way he said and phrased things, players that stayed. One guy who left was Sam Hartman, and he's, of course, the quarterback at Notre Dame.
He also never said an ill word about Sam Hartman. He said, I understand, which was also kind of crazy for a coach to say, but he's like, you get that opportunity with that money, you got to go.
Yeah, sure. And so here is now Dave Clawson discussing senior day for the Irish compared to the time spent on Hartman at Wake Forest.
You know, we saw it last week in South Bend, right? I mean, it's, you know, here's a guy that we recruited and we developed, and, you know, they're putting a video on him saying, we will always love you. And I'm like, you only dated him for a couple of months. It can't be love. We're the ones that love him. We had 5 years with him. You rented him for a season. So, you know, and that's, you know, they bought him and rented him for a year, and now they love him. So it's, you know, that when that video played, it's just like, holy cow, this is where college football is. So.
I love the honesty. He's dead on right too, Chad. That is where college football is, and it's where fan bases are.
Well, and I don't know that like anybody's really wrong here. I also kind of see it as an attempt to troll a little bit by Notre Dame, right? With that video, with it being Wake Forest on senior day too, with the "We will always love you" type deal. So I'm not sure that it's completely genuine by Notre Dame and all this. Maybe it is.
But everyone loves love, right?
Yeah, he's right in that it's
he chose them just like he chose Wake Forest, and so you have both programs who love him.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
It's just I get his frustration because it's like everybody now gets to have the best of all worlds.
Yes.
And where college football, the fun part of it was, this is my guy. Right now, there's people arguing over whose guy is the whole Jalen Hurts debate. Is he Oklahoma quarterback Jalen Hurts or Alabama quarterback Jalen Hurts, right? Where you never had this as an issue until the last, 5 to 10 years.
Joe Burrow's another one.
With the transfer portal, Joe Burrow's a good one. And we all, if you're impartial, you mentally go to one school or the other. But I get his frustration in what he's saying about, well, this is, I guess, where we are in college football right now, and it's not really a great thing that that's where we are. You make a decision typically, and it's, okay, even if it's a program that is, lesser in the eyes of college football fans or history or whatever, I went here because it was the best of my options at the time, and now I'm going to make it into something, and I'm going to stay. Well, that's just no longer the case because now guys get good at programs like a Wake Forest, and they're going to have better opportunities for more money at more high-profile historic programs. And it leads to what Dave Clawson is saying, the frustration of this is where we are in college basketball or college football now, I guess. It's just I get the frustration with it. And I don't think anybody did anything wrong here either. Sam Hartman, I don't think really did anything wrong. Notre Dame didn't do anything wrong by going out and getting the guy in the transfer portal.
Right.
That was the best quarterback. It's just, it's frustrating. It's different. It's not the same. And people might argue, well, if you're just against change, then I'm for change when it's for the better. I don't know that all change is for the better. And I don't think that what Clawson is talking about with Sam Hartman is a change for the better of college football. It also just leads to what Mike Elko described as complete and utter chaos once the regular season ends and once the transfer portal opens and teams trying to manage their own roster. And some will win and some will lose big time in the transfer portal and in recruiting with signing day coming up.
But how chaotic is it actually? Because if you're losing a guy to the portal, you're gaining a player from the portal. You're also a part of
that's the chaotic part of it.
But for the coaches.
Well, that's the chaotic part of it. It's hard to develop a program. And I'm looking at Wake Forest perspective.
But I'm saying, I'm saying from Elko's perspective, if he was offered the A&M job, he's jumping even further into the deep end after saying what he said.
Yeah, but it's different at A&M than it is at Duke.
Right.
He's talking as a Duke head coach right now.
But he's
and
talking
it's going to be hard for him.
He's talking though to the programs that you're right, it is different. But the haves and the have-nots, he would join the haves and be a part of who he's complaining about.
Yes and no. You don't have to take that approach.
At A&M, you will.
I don't know that you have to. You don't at A&M, actually. You don't have to do any transfers if you're at A&M. You can keep all of them with your NIL money. You can recruit all your high school kids and actually develop a program. We're going to get into what Tom Brady had to say about this. There's no more programs. There's very few programs. There's teams year to year, but there's not a lot of development within programs. It's even harder to do that if you are a developmental program, quote unquote, at Wake Forest or at Duke. What Clawson and Elko are talking about is it is damn near impossible for me to have a developmental program because when I develop someone that's not a big-time prospect into a great NFL prospect, they're going to start getting hit up in the transfer portal to go to a better team or a better program that's going to play in front of more people on Saturdays or get in front of more eyeballs on television, and they're going to go. Yeah. That makes my life even harder now for a guy who's selling family, culture, development, all those things. I get it. It's not ideal. But even the good programs are going to face chaos. There's going to be players at good programs that decide, hey, I'm not getting the playing time I want, or I don't like the offense as much as I thought. I'm going to go somewhere else. It's what we keep getting back to. Getting a job in the NFL right now is far better and easier as a coach than being in college football. Now, there's a reason those top-level college coaches make so much money too, but it's far easier in the NFL right now because of all these other headaches you have to deal with.
Maybe it would be far easier if the college players unionized and we had a cap.
If we had a cap, then you could have a general manager and you could have people that take care of that for you, right? That would make it far easier on the coach.
It could.
Roster management would become easier at that point.
Rules and regulations that you can't.
Yeah.
You can't tamper.
And I think the first rule is when you sign, it's a 3-year agreement out of high school. And then you can go wherever you want after that. Then you can start working into other people's salary cap at that point also.
So we like what Dave Clawson had to say. Thanksgiving's tomorrow. We'll give thanks tomorrow. But each and every week at this time, we air our top grievance of the week.
It's time to air our top grievance of the week.
You can complain all you want.
My job is so unfulfilling. Don't run away from your feelings.
It's time for Hot Mike's primary complaint.
Guys, my primary complaint this week, I like consistency in the narratives that are pushed in an off season of a sport. And every year, and the NFL is brilliant at this, they have made they've made news by just releasing their schedule in May. But when it's released, we as a media, as a fan base, and I'm one of them, pour through these schedules. We look at the primetime slots. After a year where it was awful, we're comparing it this year. Amazon's jumping in for Black Friday. They're getting the Jets and Aaron Rodgers against Tua and the Miami Dolphins. I can't then fast forward and start complaining about the schedule makers now. I can't complain about the schedule makers who have Patriots Giants in week 12 and know that the Patriots are going to have 2 wins. And the Giants right now look like the worst team in football despite their win last week with Tommy DeVito at quarterback after what they had done the year prior. It's not just on the schedule makers. We'll get to Brady, as Chad said, in a moment. It's about where the league is right now. And there's a reason why they cap certain teams on how many times they can be on national television. There's a reason why certain networks don't want a lot of the bad teams. But not every year are you going to have a perfect primetime slate. And all of a sudden, in what looked like crap in September, Vikings-Broncos is pretty good on Sunday Night Football. I just want some consistency in how we cover an offseason versus how we treat the regular season. That's my primary complaint.
Hutton, perfect segue into my primary complaint because I'm going to complain also about consistency with schedule and schedules, plural. Schedules are meant to be vertical, people, okay?
Yes.
Google does this. Other websites do this where schedules will be side by side, 4 in a square, whatever it may be. I'll take it a step further. Schedules need to be in the smallest amount of space vertical. If you have a football season that's 12 games or 17 games, college or pro, I want to see it all on one screen on my computer, on my device. Straight up and down, vertical, not huge boxes with ticket information and videos and all this other stuff on there. Straight up and down, vertical. If you have an 82-game or 162-game season, I get that I can't get it all there, but still make it as small as possible and vertical.
Please.
We have to get away
Thank you, Chad.
from horizontal schedules online. It's very simple. Vertical, small, one box, one screen. I could be the web developer and designer for pro sports teams, college teams everywhere with that simple idea. Schedules are meant to be vertical. When they're not, it is my primary complaint.
Gentlemen, I guess we're all three hitting the trifecta on the schedules. Mine has to deal with fantasy football. Currently the commissioner, I play in one fantasy football league.
And you are the commissioner
I
of
am
the
the
league.
commissioner.
I'm thankful for you, David, for that.
And the biggest issue is I'm the commissioner of a bunch of idiots. I have gone through so many issues with my friends. And again, this is a league where every single one of us graduated within 2 years of each other in high school. So we've known each other for years and years at this point. But my problem is, if you notice something's wrong at the beginning of the season and you want me to go in and fix it, let me know at the beginning of the season. We're 2 weeks out from playoffs and you have an issue with the schedule and you're just now letting me know? I mean, I'm going to go through some of my friends. Listen, Tyler, I don't even know why
Tyler.
You are trying. The other thing with Tyler is now that he's finally had one good year, he wants to make this a dynasty league and just make it all keepers. It's like, that's not how this
Very
works,
smart.
you idiot.
He does know how it works then.
Next, Hayden always sending memes in the group chat about how you don't always get the waivers you want. We have a waiver system. You know the system. If you don't like it, make better decisions. Nate, I don't even know why I bother with you half the time. Caleb, Brian, I do appreciate you guys. Taylor, you're good. But
you're cool.
Dallas, like,
is it Hayden or Aiden?
Hayden.
Okay.
Hayden.
Hayden and Dallas sound like problems already.
Dallas, you always Yeah, I know it's your first year in the group, man, but come on, get with the program. We have a system. Look at how we're doing things, learn, and go from there. But again, you don't have great examples to go by, so I can somewhat forgive you on that. But that's my primary complaint. I feel like James Gandolfini, when he's Tony Soprano and he's just driving around in his car, he's like singing dirty work. He's like, I don't want to do your dirty work no more. I feel like I am him in that moment where he just has that look on his face of he's just tired of dealing with the BS, and so am I.
Davey, I love how angry you got.
Sound like Chad is a softball coach.
That was
dealing
great.
with this this one's been bullying for a couple weeks now.
And I'm thankful that you're only in one league. I would love to do that. Chad and I are in, I believe, 2. Are you in 1 this year?
I'm in 1.
We were always in like 2 or 3, just based on different things going on. Or
I'm
sponsors.
typically in 1, maybe 2.
I hate those that are like, oh, I'm doing this league, and you're boasting about the league, but you're also losing in the other one. You failed to mention that.
How are your other 4 teams?
Yeah.
My nephew
Fabiano has a reason to be in 17,000 leagues.
He does.
I would like to keep it to 1.
Yeah, my nephew Josh, I'm talking to you. You don't have a reason to be in 17 leagues, even though you are.
Tom Brady on the state of today's NFL play. Next.
Puka Nakua.
Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, of our, well, she's not the president, that's Sean Black, but the chairman of the YouTube chat, and she's also the beer captain. She's the captain of beer and IU and partying, our friend Jennifer, a.k.a. Gritty. Gritty, what say you?
Hi, Coach Dockage. It's Gritty, and I was just calling about Caleb Williams wanting to go home and snuggle with his dog after getting beat. If I'm looking to draft a football player, I want to get an alpha male, not a beta male that's going to go home and cry about the loss. An alpha male will go home, try harder, work on his game plan, and all that good stuff, and not go home and cry to his mommy. Love the show. Peace out.
Ending with a peace out gives me goosebumps, because peace out is the way of the world. That's Gritty, and that's right. Women want real men. Real men are dying to be real men. I mean, I'm sorry, but they are. Look, I'm not some macho clown. I'm as sensitive as the next guy. I can't get through a movie sometimes without crying. Sometimes somebody does something really nice for me, and I well up. I learned this. Let me show you something that I learned, Gritty. I learned at movies, or when I'm going to cry, to do this. Watch. What I'm doing is I'm blowing up into my eyes, and that dries them so people don't see tears. I get crying, but I don't get crying when you lose a game, jumping up in the stands and crying with your mother. Honest to God, where does the drama end? Where does it end? Look, a friend of mine made a great point. Maybe it was on this show. I can't remember. He said, Doc, 84, minute 18 to go. You turned the ball over against Virginia. We were up 1. All right, they scored, fine. But guess what? I wasn't going to go in there and cry. I mean, I've thought about it every day for 40, 50 years, but I wasn't going to cry. Wasn't going to happen. No chance was I going to cry. I mean, are you nuts? Hell no. Cry to my mom and dad? If I would have run up, it was with Ken Sterling on Two Big Brains. If I would have run up into the stands at the Omni in Atlanta, buried my head in a book, and wept to my mother under the book would have gone, get in the locker room. And my mother's the holiest of women. There is nobody holier than the great Roberta Dockage. There's not. But my father would have gone, oh, my father would have evaluated himself. My father would have said, what did I do to raise this? Which is exactly what I would have done if Andrew D. would have done that when he played at Ohio State or Michigan. Like, they lost to Gonzaga. All right. If Andrew would have had I guess he played in the game, played about 30 minutes, so I guess he did have a problem. Or he didn't help him win, I guess. So there you go. But if he would have come, oh, shut up. I mean, after the game in the hotel, hey, I'm down with that. I'm cool with that. Yeah. Privately. But you don't sit there. See, women like Gritty are real women. They're smart. They're beautiful. They're tough. They just get it. They're not afraid. They'll tell guys when they're screwing up. They'll tell guys when they're great.
Just like that, the second hour is here. Wednesday edition, Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow across the OutKick network. Coming up in 20 minutes, Clay Travis will join us. We've got Chad's top 10 games of the college football weekend. One big thing on every NFL game.
Andrea Kremer. Big show left.
Yeah.
A lot of meat on the bone.
Getting you to the Thanksgiving weekend. Happy Thanksgiving to you and yours.
Meat on the bone today.
That's right. Chad, 2 for 2, by the way. 2 weeks in a row. Great college basketball in the middle of the week.
Yeah.
Props. Not just to the tournaments, but I think this is a carryover to what we saw from the tournament last year.
Tournament was excellent last year.
Very competitive, even. You know, it's just so far so good in that regard.
Well, it's the Maui field helps with that, right? I mean, you've got 3, 4 really top 10, Gonzaga's 11th teams in that field.
How far in advance is that scheduled?
A year out. I think it's about a year out that they do it.
Yeah. So I mean, but even that you've got.
You don't really know
some other
until you
tournaments
get
starting
into
up. Yeah. I mean, I'm into it, and as you well know, I normally don't get into it until around January.
So
this is good. I think this is great for college basketball, and I like again, it's not like you're turning it on to see a certain matchup and then the score separated by the 15-minute mark of the second half. Different. It's great.
Yeah, Tennessee and Kansas are playing right now. Tennessee in consecutive days have played the number 1 and number 2 team in the country. So they played Purdue number 2 yesterday, lost by 4.
Yeah.
Losing by 6 right now to Kansas, under 10 minutes left in that game. Number 2 and number 1. Tennessee's next game is at number 14, North Carolina. And I was telling you guys, consecutive games with that on consecutive days, followed by a road trip all away from home, and then North Carolina. I'm not saying that to, give Tennessee a banner or anything, but that is tough scheduling. And I'm all for that because your point, Hutton, it gives us games like this instead of Tennessee having 5 straight games against teams that are going to beat by 25 to 35 points at home, which a lot of teams are doing that now too, and that's part of the schedule. I understand that, but that makes for great basketball and compelling basketball early in the season, which is only good for the sport.
What's good for the NFL? Tom Brady joining Stephen A. Smith on his podcast recently and said that, hey, it's not a good league right now. It's not the first time he said this about certain rules set up to bail out bad decisions by quarterbacks and bad offense or just poor play versus technique. But the quote he had to say here on Stephen A. Smith's YouTube show, I think there's a lot of mediocrity in today's NFL. I don't see the excellence that I saw in the past. I think the coaching isn't as good as it was. I don't think the development of young players is as good as it was. The rules have allowed a lot of bad habits to get into the actual performance of the game. So I just think the product, in my opinion, is less than what it's been. He goes on. He said in the past that offensive players, they need to protect themselves, and it's not the defense's fault. It's
not the defense's job to protect them.
Can't protect himself. But this was a couple years ago when, and I made the reference through the first month of the season, there were 500 touchdowns compared to like 390 this year to 2021. So this hasn't been since, NIL, July of 21. I don't think it's just the mindset of the player, because over the last 2 years, it hasn't been this bad. Over the last 2 years, Vegas normally adjusts to a trend of an over-under, and for whatever reason, they can't figure it out now. And it's also not just, Chad, it's not just the NFL, it's also college. A lot of the unders are hitting there too.
Yeah. It is sloppy. I mean, quarterback play is worse. Offensive football is down. There's no way around it. And I understand.
And I agree with the coaching aspect.
And I do think they've developed bad habits. And I do think it starts in college. He talked about college football also being a part of the problem. There's not as many programs. Mentioned Michigan being very much a developmental, almost pro-style program when he was coming through at Michigan. You don't have that as much now in college. I love what he had to say. I think, some people are saying this is old man on the front of his lawn telling kids to, get off his lawn. I don't see it that way. It's a lot of sloppy football being played. It's not just, oh boy, the defenses are a lot better. I think the rules have allowed offensive players to get into worse habits. As he's mentioned, not just in this podcast, but before, quarterbacks throwing receivers into danger. That now they don't think about it as much because they're going to get the 15-yard penalty if the hit is there, which he wouldn't have done during his career with guys like a Ray Lewis. He wouldn't throw it into certain spots knowing Ray Lewis would have taken out the best player in the game had he thrown it into certain spots around him. So,
but also,
I wholeheartedly agree with Brady.
I do too.
On this. It's not just defenses are better. It's a combination. I don't know if it's a combination. It's way more sloppy football, lack of development in some instances in college. We see that on the offensive line for sure, from college football to the NFL, and we see the lack of great offensive line play in the league. So I'm with him on this one, Hutton.
Offenses are sputtering, and they're scoring touchdowns on 53% of drives right now on scoring drives. A lot of coaches are settling for field goals right now. And the passing games are. You're right about the offensive line. I'll say this about the O-line. I think the COVID year and the O-line, with the bonus year where we don't even know what eligibility a player has or has had.
Yeah, no clue. We got 25-year-old seniors all over the place.
Jim Nagy in the Senior Bowl, they already have 7 or 8 commitments to play in the Senior Bowl that are top 75 picks on the offensive line. So there's an influx there where you're going to get better. But I think, a lot of people I hear, and I think it's just an easy, random rinse and repeat line. Oh, they don't put pads on anymore. They don't hit. They don't spend enough time in the off season. These are the coaches complain about this, and the coaches will have a damn dizzy bat race in the off season instead of using a practice day. They'll go to Topgolf on one of their days where the team is in town and supposed to be on the field. I don't listen to that crap. If you're not going to use the small amount of time you have, they have 14 to 16 practices during the season where you can put pads on. I guarantee you, there are coaches right now that still have 10 of those days right now. So I really suffer I don't suffer the coaches that will complain about it in the offseason and then not use it. They don't use it because of injury management. But that's also why the NFL, in part, gave in to the players in their negotiation. There was also a win for the players, while the ownership wins by adding a Black Friday game if they want to, and there's no pushback. Chad, it's more than just putting pads on and hitting. It is the attention to detail is not there. There are aspects of the college football game that have held players back, or they're staying. There's not a ton of players that are opting to stay because of NIL versus where they would be. They're opting to stay because they can get paid the same and then enhance where they'll be in the draft and virtually be paid the same guaranteed money if you're like a late day 2, day 3 pick. But late day 2, day 3 picks aren't starters from the jump. The starters that are drafted in the first round, by and large, aren't hitting at the same rate. And this year, maybe it's just an anomaly. We'll see. But the numbers this year offensively are so bad compared to not just Brady's era, and I realize he hasn't been out of the league for a full year yet, just compared to the last 2 years with the influx of talent. It's still really down, and I think there's a lot of excuse making. The defenses have adjusted to the rules. How to hit, how to tackle, what's going to be a flag, more likely than not, how to beat an offensive tackle that's not as athletic as you are on the edge. And I think by and large, Chad, the offense, they should be taking advantage. You mentioned, you're right, quarterback can throw a receiver in harm's way and it's no longer, you got jacked up, right? That segment doesn't exist anymore because the NFL rules, and the NFL didn't want ESPN doing it to begin with, but the NFL rules are set up to where you don't see that anymore. But even without that, they're still dropping passes. There's still sloppy play. They're still throwing into over a guy's head into a sideline instead of being accurate with the ball. It's alarming. and they'll push, and I'll mention this in one big thing, how close games have been. That doesn't mean games are really good, but they are exciting in the final possession. I mean, it comes down to that, are they going to go down and score or not? But score probably means a field goal. And right now it's an offensive league that settles on field goals, which is bizarre in 2023.
Well, the other thing is with the injury part of it, injury maintenance and guys not wanting to have contact and do that. What's the cause and effect with that? Is it because they're not getting as much contact in practice that it leads to more injuries on the field? Is it poor technique and poor coaching that leads to more shoulder injuries with guys trying to make tackles? Is it guys are just not as tough and not playing through injuries as much? Is it guys that maybe lean into injuries more? There's a lot of questions I have about the injury part of this too, and what really is causing it.
Right.
Would it be better to have more contact and tackling in practice in order to prevent some injuries?
I'm sure.
I don't know the answer to those questions, but I think when you're talking about the dizzy bat race and things like that and not hitting as much in practice, what's causing what with all of this?
Yeah, and you're right, it's injury maintenance. But also...
but is the injury maintenance actually causing more injuries? Would be my question too, because they're not getting as many reps.
I don't
with the physical nature of the game that leads to more injuries.
I just don't see as many like non-contact injuries in the off season. There's always one or two, and that can happen, right? But I think that's what they're more concerned about. If you're going to get hurt on game day, and help us for a quarter. If you're going to be out for the rest of the season, Again, that's the maintenance part of it. Meanwhile, Patrick Mahomes is playing in every preseason game. To each his own. I just don't think there's a rhyme or reason or a 0.2 factor that NIL is to cause the mindset of it. And I'm not saying Brady is saying just that. But were there guys who are extremely tough in the good old days, to sound old? Yes. Fighting through concussions now is looked at as dumb. Things change. And I think are there guys that use that as an easy way out? Sure. Absolutely. Because you can... In a locker room now, you can be dinged. I'm just not saying concussion. Just anyway, are you injured or are you hurt? Right? There's a difference, and I think right now there's not necessarily a difference between the two.
Yeah.
But also guys are playing through some awful stuff when the injury reports weren't what they were. Then I'm saying Brady's early part of his career, the Ray Lewis era, Chad. To mention the kill shots over the middle.
It's very different, and I feel like I see more shoulder injuries with defensive backs and guys not knowing, how to tackle as much anymore. There's a lot of that
question,
happens
though,
too.
And I agree with what you're saying. At what point do the ratings level off? At what point does it have to regress back to something better than what it is as far as production on the field? Because the ratings are up. No one's complaining really about that. No one, meaning the decision makers. Not complaining about that. And by the way, the players aren't the decision makers.
It would take the quarterback injury issue and quarterback play not being as good in the NFL to go on for 3-4 more years, to where the identifiable stars of the league at quarterback are no longer around and there's no real stars. I think that's what it would take for the ratings to tank, honestly, is a bunch of quarterbacks that no one cares about because they're not very good. That's probably all that would do it. I think it's as close to indestructible as you can get in terms of interest and eyeballs watching the NFL.
And it's going to continue to rise based on sports wagering, state to state. And you've got money that's up. You've got a recent report from the American Gaming Association that Americans bet $23 billion on sports during the third quarter of the year. And that leads to a pace to hit $100 billion in wagers for the year. It's insane. But that is the elephant in the room, Chad, that you have hammered about sign stealing, about why looking into why you've got certain players not listed on injury report. Joe Burrow. You've got a couple of weeks ago running Bijan Robinson in Atlanta, who has an illness on the road in the hotel. They don't disclose. This is why. $100 billion in wagers from, by and large, there's a ton of money being funneled to the NFL for revenue purposes. And
that's what they have to look into. It's the integrity of the game issues. And it's not just the fans get into, well, Michigan would have won those games no matter what. They killed these teams. Okay, that's fine. I'm not talking about just winning the game. I'm talking about killing the teams. Is there a line that was affected where a bunch of money changed hands because Michigan gained some sort of a legal advantage that otherwise they wouldn't have without a sign-stealing operation? The Joe Burrow deal with not disclosing injury in the NFL. You have to take all this stuff seriously because of the gambling implications.
Why is the state of Iowa taking it seriously that a backup is betting on his team and not against him? Or a kicker that took the under didn't actually attempt what could be a kick that put it to the over-under, hit the under, I believe. The other kicker in the Iowa State game attempted that kick, a meaningless one at the very end of the game. It didn't affect the overall result of the game, but it affected the bet that the other kicker had placed. Again, if it's going to be what it is, why does that matter? If stealing signs doesn't affect the spread as well, or the over-under. Not stealing signs in the NFL. Everything's hitting the under, Chad.
The last thing you can have is anyone questioning the integrity of your games, whether it be through players doing something, officiating. It is the Hippocratic oath of sports is to do no harm and do your best and to try to win the game. And the understanding when you go into a game is that everyone is trying to win it to the best of their ability and knowledge. And if someone has an advantage or someone's not doing that, that's when you got a problem in your sport.
Speaking of eyeballs and hitting the under, you still had Monday night. 21-17 was the final, but we mentioned yesterday Eagles-Chiefs. Monday Night Football's largest audience in 27 years. Largest audience that we've seen. And should we give a standing ovation that Taylor Swift was not in the house for this?
Yeah, it didn't even take Taylor Swift to be there. Was she in Brazil the whole time?
Yeah,
she
she's
didn't leave
on her
Brazil,
world tour
right?
now.
Yeah, so look at that. NFL doesn't even need Taylor Swift. Who knew?
Yeah.
For people to watch.
Just need top quarterbacks, but not necessarily touchdowns being scored.
Nope. Quarterback play, no problem either if you don't have that.
That's right. Hey, Clay Travis joins us next. We'll get his pick where he's putting his money on Michigan, Ohio State, and much more. That's straight ahead on Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow across the OutKick network.
The rest of the world doesn't know this. I have a day drinking day that I have at the owners meeting, and it's Mike Tomlin and I throw it, and it's only for head coaches and GMs. No other media is allowed to come, and the media over time has given us respect. Like, this is Glazer's thing. Let's not go there. And it's usually Tomlin and I and upwards of 30 other guys. It's crazy. But what I also do is I always tell Tomlin and whoever the older coaches are, tell these young cats what's about to come across your desk, because they have no idea. Like the craziest stories in the world, and you're not prepared for it. Because when you're in that position, you really find out how messed up everybody is. Like it's not just your players, it's your coaches, it's your scouts, it's your GMs, it's the person in the cafeteria, it's everything. And then it's their family and the issues families are calling. And oh my God. And listen, these cats didn't go to school for this. They didn't go to school to be a psychiatrist. Right? They went in the coaching to coach.
Right.
But when you're a head coach or a GM, that's part of the job. The other part is really, it all lands on your shoulders. So I make Tomlin and all the other guys tell the craziest stories that have come across their desk in the early days to prepare the new guys.
Well, and also probably to help normalize everybody else, right? Because we all probably live our lives thinking, oh my God, no one could understand, or no one life is as crazy as mine or as messed up as mine. And then you hear someone else's story, you're like, wait a second, you have me beat. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there's a couple, and I can't tell them on this, that are there are we go to them. We usually start these fun days off with these couple stories that there's no way I'll ever repeat, but they are like, Charlie, if you said to me, hey, if I told you any of them, you'd say, come on, you made this up. There's no way this could be possible. And the craziest thing about the NFL is that anything's possible. You know, when we did Ballers, people were like, come on, that stuff doesn't happen in the NFL. I'm like, this is a G-rated version of what happens in the NFL. Are you kidding me?
Okay, you just took me to literally the best segue, because something I remember you saying, and I remember you saying it a few times, the NFL is truly the greatest reality show in the world.
Can't make it up.
And that is what you're talking about, is a testament to exactly why. I mean, there's all these stories that happen, and they're not scripted stories.
Yeah. Look at the Raiders this week. They fire their head coach and general manager at 10 o'clock at night. and put in ex-Giant linebacker Antonio Pierce to run the team. Like, look at last year with the Colts. They put in Jeff Saturday. Like, you can't make it up, right? So it's just like it's great because even for me, like I said, with these things, like I think I've seen it all. There was something that happened this year. I said, man, we've seen it all, and then this happened. I don't remember what it up. I can't remember what it was.
If you think about it, just
okay, yeah, I can't
break
remember
your
what
thought,
it was. But they're
go
like, man,
straight
we've
to
seen
it.
everything, and then this thing popped up just when you thought you've seen everything, and you really like. That's the thing. If and I've been around. By the way, this is my 30th year, right? Is that? I don't know. Yep, 31st year. It's my 31st year. My 20th year at Fox. I started covering the league for the New York Post in '95, so that would make it like. But I started earlier in '93, so that's 31 years. So '95, was it 29 years covering the league? Yeah. So I've seen it all. I've been around. I think I've seen it for the most part. The stuff that's been reported and stuff that hasn't been reported, and yet every year there are still things that surprise me.
Sixth and Peabody, our location, Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow rolls on across the OutKick network, joined by Clay Travis, founder of OutKick. Joins us each week at this time. Clay, happy Thanksgiving to you and the family, man.
Happy Thanksgiving to you guys as well. Hope everybody's having a good Wednesday so far.
Yes, I'm trying to tell myself not to fast forward to Saturday for Michigan and Ohio State. I'm trying to be patient with this, but I can't think of a more suited rivalry for this in the final year of what we know to be the Power Five. And in a way, I'm thankful that there is a sign-stealing saga and everything that's gone on with Jim Harbaugh and what it means for Ryan Day now, too, with Harbaugh not coaching this game.
Yeah, look, I think we're, heading towards what should be a really fantastic football, basketball, weekend. And I can't wait. I'm down here in Florida with my family, and we'll see whether we get chaos or not, right? I mean, I would say for college football, the story so far this year has been something the likes of which we haven't seen maybe ever, which is all the best teams keep winning. And obviously we know Michigan or Ohio State is going to lose. And at some point, maybe we'll see a Florida State or a Texas fall out. Obviously, we've got Alabama and Georgia still coming down the line. But right now, if you project out, there's the potential of, without any upsets happening, a situation where there are 5 teams deserving of 4 playoff spots, and we'll have to see how all of that ends up being set out before all is said and done. But it sets up for some pretty great drama.
Clay, do you prefer a respectful rivalry where the two head coaches actually deep down respect each other, or one where both head coaches absolutely despise the other one? Because both Jim Harbaugh and Ryan Day were asked this week if they respect the other program or coach, and they refused to answer that question. There is legitimate hatred between these two men.
I always think when I watch the end of an NFL game, and everybody's walking around smiling, whether they won or lost, and like high-fiving and hugging and everything else.
Trading gloves, trading receivers' gloves with each other,
writing Bible verses on jerseys.
I always feel a little bit like I got played because it feels like I care about who won the game. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that perspective, because if you are a multimillionaire getting paid millions of dollars to play a game, it's probably the right perspective when the game is over to just go congratulate the other multimillionaires. But I feel like if you want me to care, then I need to think that the teams genuinely dislike each other. And so I prefer not just the coaches, but I prefer the Detroit Pistons and the Chicago Bulls seem to genuinely still really dislike each other.
Yeah.
And I want for there to be actual disdain and discord. I think what's happened in a lot of pro sports, and I think high level college too, is so many of these kids now know each other, at relatively young ages and become friends, which is healthy and normal. And so many of these coaches come up together and work through the ranks, and sometimes they've been on the same coaching staff. And so I understand it. But as a fan, I would prefer to believe that the coaches and the players genuinely don't like each other, because when the game's over and my team has lost, I'm not thinking, oh, what a great game, I'd like to go handshake somebody. Like, I want them to be as angry as I am.
Yeah, it's like we've long said, like the NFL players need a 10-minute cooling off period. But within 60 seconds, they'll go swap jerseys and high five.
It happens all the time.
Yeah.
It drives me nuts too, Clay. So
I don't mind, like everybody gets upset when the game ends and like there's pushing and shoving and stuff like that on the final snaps. I get it's not ideal sportsmanship, but it's emotional, and it makes me at least know how angry these guys are to lose.
Yeah.
I would rather see an angry loser than a, happy-go-lucky, grinning immediately, high-fiving and changing jerseys.
So, Clay, we're going to have Andrea Kremer on. The final ever HBO Real Sports aired last night, and the news coming out of it is Jim Irsay, the profile she did with him, and we'll ask her about this. But in that profile, he said that he got pulled over for DUI in 2014 because cops are after rich white billionaires, and they unlawfully target white billionaires. And she even said, how this is going to be perceived, right? He said, I don't give a damn. It's the truth. I was unlawfully targeted by the police. Clay, as a rich white millionaire, other than the IRS unlawfully going after you, have you ever felt targeted by the police the way Jim Irsay is apparently in his posh Indianapolis suburb where he lives?
Well, first of all, the benefit of having FU money is that you really don't, like, what is somebody going to do to him? Like, he can say exactly what he thinks, and I think that is what a lot of people aspire to, particularly in this country where everybody's always tiptoeing around whatever they think. First of all, I would think it would be hard to target rich white billionaires because there just aren't very many billionaires, period. So, I mean, I guess you could go to, like, Aspen or Jackson Hole, places where you have to be so rich and just like kind of cross your fingers and hope you hit somebody. No, I've never felt like other than the IRS, which I think is certainly targeting me for being rich. I've never really felt like I was targeted, but I didn't feel like I was targeted when I was poor. I didn't feel like I'm being targeted now. Like I think, even by whatever standards you want that exist, I'm not really a fearful person. So I don't spend most of my time like looking over my shoulder, convinced or afraid that somebody's going to try to do something to me. I will say, and I'm probably jinxing myself and somebody will grab this clip, I try, if I'm going to have a beer, certainly if I'm going to think that I might have 2 beers, I try to take an Uber everywhere, because I don't necessarily feel like I'm being targeted. But I will say, if I ever got arrested for a DUI, or if I ever got arrested, frankly, for any reason, it would be a major news story, and it would circulate and it would get a lot of attention. So if I think I'm going to have a couple of beers or anything like that, I will not even think about driving. And I take Ubers everywhere. So if I can afford to do that, and certainly I can be telling my kids that that's the decision they should be making. I would say in general, back in the day when it was hard to get a cab. I mean, in the era in which I grew up in, and I bet a lot of people out there listening and or watching will know what I'm talking about. Like, if you're not in a major city, like if you weren't in New York, or Washington, D.C., where I went to college, like it was hard to get a cab in Nashville in 2002 to go anywhere in a pre-Uber era. I remember being very excited. I would, you'd have to call and you'd have to make an appointment to get a cab, and then the cab might or might not come, and you had to call way in advance. And, nowadays we're all spoiled where we can pull our phone out and pretty much anywhere, and Uber or a Lyft or whatever can be there in like 15 minutes. I think it's a lot harder to justify getting in trouble in any kind of way for alcohol today than it would have been 10 or 15 years ago even.
I've referred to Irsay as the Charlie Sheen of NFL ownership. He's blaming, he's being targeted, but also he's blaming it on his hip replacement surgery, not because of anything he's addicted
Yeah,
to.
I don't know the particulars. I also don't know, to be fair, whether his did he plead guilty? Like, I don't remember how his DUI situation was.
He pled guilty to a misdemeanor of reckless driving or something.
It may be the case that there was evidence that he in some way was being targeted, based on being pulled over. And by targeted, what I mean is, usually you have to have some sort of probable cause to pull someone over who was driving. And a lot of times, I take it outside of Jim Irsay, didn't Steve McNair beat a DUI once because I think it was Steve McNair. Before the situation, obviously, where he got murdered. I feel like he got pulled over and they had the video footage of him driving and there was no probable cause to pull him over. And so they had to dismiss what they uncovered. Somebody can look that up and confirm that it's true. If it wasn't McNair, it was another popular Titan of that era. But I think it was McNair. You have to, if you have high-end legal representation, oftentimes there is a video of the footage that someone will try to use as justification. I'm not talking about, hey, we've set up for instance, a roadblock or whatever, where they're checking everybody. It's like a DUI checkpoint because you can stop everybody. Then that's the premise of the checkpoint. But I'm just saying, if you watch somebody pull out of a place and they're driving and they don't appear to be inebriated, you can beat the pullover sometimes with good legal representation. So that may be what Irsay did. I don't know enough about his case in particular.
Clay Travis with us on Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow across the OutKick network. Is what has gone on at Michigan, Clay, overshadowed a possible three-peat for Georgia? Does Saturday matter from this perspective? Is Georgia winning it all again based on what you've seen?
I think Georgia's the best team, but Alabama's going to be a super hard game. Whoever they play in both of the rounds of the playoff would be hard. Remember, Georgia was very fortunate. I don't think they would have won last year if Marvin Harrison Jr. hadn't gotten knocked out of that game. They were very, very fortunate to come back and win as they did against Ohio State. I think Georgia should be the favorite, but I'd probably only say, I wouldn't take Georgia even money right now because I think they'll be favored by 3.5 or 4 over Alabama. What does that mean? They've got a 40% chance of losing that game at least. And then they wouldn't be not like they'd be 2 touchdown favorites over whoever they played in the postseason. So I think Georgia should be the favorite. I do think you're right that Michigan has overshadowed a little bit what would otherwise be the story of Georgia's three-peat. I also think Georgia didn't play really well early in the season. So
I'm with you.
I think many people anticipated that they would lose. I think if they had looked as good as they have against Ole Miss and Tennessee all year long, that there would have been a lot more talk about the odds of a three-peat for Georgia. And then also their schedule plays in on it. They didn't play a lot of great competition. So it's not like people sat around and said, oh, we got a huge top 10 matchup for Georgia this week. So I think all of that factors in. But I think the Michigan story, look, this is going to be and is right now the most watched season of college football on television in the history of college football. That to me means, again, controversy, conflict, it always sells. And I would expect that Michigan-Ohio State come Saturday at noon Eastern is going to be the most watched game in the history of the season, and what is the most watched season of college football ever.
Clay, what do you think about the A&M opening? And there's some reports getting out now that they might have it wrapped up in the next week or so. The need to get to the next coach quicker now in college football because of transfer portal and everything else in an early signing period. What direction should they go? What should they be thinking, considering how the Jimbo Fisher deal didn't work out?
Well, I think signing day is December 21st. So you certainly, with that and the transfer portal, they've got a really good recruiting class. I haven't paid a lot of attention to how many of those A&M people have stayed committed, but certainly you can well imagine that those guys who are top recruits are getting pursued and were being pursued before they ever committed to A&M by a lot of people. So I think that's smart. I think you would want basically as soon as the season is over to get a coach in as fast as possible. And then you've got 3 weeks to corral the early signees and do your best job to get all those people enrolled. And then you figure out, it's a tough turn what are you going to do in the transfer portal? Because you basically have perpetual free agency right now in college football, which is unlike anything we even have in the NFL. And arguably it's more challenging in college than it is in the NFL to manage rosters now. Plus you've got what I think this is the last year coming up of the COVID year. So there are a lot of guys that ordinarily would already be gone that'll also still be in the mix. So there's just a lot of moving parts, and I think it makes sense. In terms of what to do at A&M, I mean, I thought Jimbo was going to win at a high level. I thought Scott Frost was going to win at a high level. I would have thought that both of those hires would have done really well. The odds of there being a bigger hire than Jimbo for A&M are very low. But you know, I think they've got to find somebody that they believe can go head to head with Sark now that the Texas rivalry is reemerging. And they're fortunate that they have basically unlimited resources because of the amount the Aggies have richer boosters thanks to the oil industry connections than anybody in the SEC and almost anybody in college football. So money shouldn't be an object. And Ross Bjork's got to go out, AD at Texas A&M, and figure out who the guy is that can take A&M to the proverbial next level. To be fair, I thought it was Jimbo Fisher. It looked like Jimbo Fisher was going to do that. Aggies came in 5th overall in a 14 playoff in 2020. I think they deserved to get in over Notre Dame. They didn't, but that's kind of how I would assess it in general.
Clay, it was McNair that you were referring to, verified by the Google machine. So you were spot on there. And happy Thanksgiving to you and the family. Tell Laura the same and the kids, and enjoy Florida.
Will do. Appreciate y'all. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody.
There's Clay Travis.
Thanks, Clay.
OutKick founder.
Same to you.
By the way, on OutKick, he's got Michigan -3.5, and he's taken a lot of unders, including Iowa and Nebraska. Will that game be listed in the top 10 games of the college football weekend? Chad's got that for you coming up.
Possibly.
Stay tuned. We know number one. I'm eager to know who else made the cut on Rivalry Weekend. Chad's got it for us on Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow across the OutKick network.
What you're experiencing is the bold taste of a Southern legend. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey, authentic Tennessee mountain-style spirits. We believe in crafting flavors that were born from tradition but defy expectation, and pioneering a new experience with every sip. Because if it doesn't do this, it ain't this. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Come on.
Welcome into OutKick the show. I am Clay Travis, your fearless leader.
I am going to continue to argue that sports is one of the great unifying forces in all of American life.
ESPN is a sinking ship. Democrats are now the party of the white, woke college graduate.
We live in a land of participation trophies.
You gotta lean into the turns. You really gotta lean into the turns.
When Leah Thomas walked in that first day, it got silent, and every girl was uncomfortable.
Very difficult to go back-to-back years in the NFL with the #1 overall pick.
Is it fair for people to be upset with Barbie?
I've been out of LA long enough to have forgotten that libs, no matter how ridiculous the scenario, are gonna lib. Another week of inflation, another week with Biden with COVID, and another set of losers to crown. People don't watch the WNBA on TV, in person, on a plane, on a train, on a bus, or on purpose. I mean, what have you seen firsthand of how this has affected you in the plant and your fellow employees? Under Joe Biden, the Taliban has retaken Afghanistan. Putin has invaded Ukraine. So if there was ever a time for freaking aliens to inhabit and conquer Earth, now would be that time.
We've seen coaches throw water bottles. We've seen coaches act like idiots. We've seen coaches slap other coaches. But I think if you're involved in carjacking, you're inherently a rotten human being. The level of stupid that sometimes gets on our YouTube chat just gives me a headache. You're born a male, play with males. You're born a female, play with females. Don't at me about it. The American people are being cheated. We, ladies and gentlemen, are being cheated.
I made the call
to end the Me Too movement. And today I'm going to continue making that case. And that's just a way to further taunt these women, to make them feel less than, to make them realize that this has just become a big joke. Deion Sanders is the Donald Trump of football.
We were directly impacted by the whole Leah Thomas thing, and we were able to see you guys on the ground with your signs supporting. That was huge.
They were saying, oh, it's only 1 or 2. That's rubbish, and we all know that's rubbish. Once those trans-identifying males were able to succeed, it just encouraged others.
Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. A bold taste of the Southern Legend.
Happy Thanksgiving to all of you. If you're part of the OutKick network right now live or watching on demand, we say thank you for that. Hot Mic with Hutton Withrow rolls on across the OutKick network. Chad, coming up, Andrea Kremer will join us about 20 minutes from right now. Plus, one big thing on every NFL game, there are some impactful matchups for Thursday and Friday. Divisional matchups. Since NBC joined the fray and started paying more, I think it was 2014 or so. It's when they made the flip. We've seen a lot of divisional matchups. Not every year, but a lot of divisional matchups on Thanksgiving Day. There's some pivotal ones based on teams that should win versus if they lose, what could happen in the playoff stack and the playoff picture.
It's got nothing on college football this week.
No, it does not. College football and the college football playoff, some impactful matchups, especially number one on the list. That is Chad Withrow's top 10 games of the college football weekend.
Need more reasons to watch college football? It's time to bang some hats. Here's Chad Withrow's must-see games this weekend.
Quick honorable mention to Farmageddon, Iowa State, Kansas State, who narrowly missed my list. And there may be some Cyclones or some Wildcats that are upset about that omission. I completely understand. Farmageddon maybe should have been in here. But it's my list. It's not yours.
That's right.
Here's my top 10 of the college football weekend. Rivalry weekend, Thanksgiving weekend. We have reached the end of the regular season. Football season flies by every year. No matter what, we anticipate it all year. It gets here, and then it's done in an instant. And there was no different this year. Here we are in the final regular season week. We're going to start with the first game that's going to be played this college football weekend. Game number 10, the Egg Bowl. Ole Miss at Mississippi State. The Rebels a 10-point favorite. Thursday night, 7:30 Eastern Time on ESPN. Lane Kiffin trying to cap off what was a really good season.
Yeah.
You've got Mississippi State playing for an interim coach. They don't know who their next coach is going to be. Will Rogers will be playing. Do they let it rip with him? How healthy is Jackson Dart? We heard from Kelly in Vegas who said, look at Mississippi State possibly to cover in this one. I'm with her, Hutton. I think this is going to be a close game. Always competitive rivalry game. These two teams do not like each other. I like this one to be close.
Which team was it that raised the leg to pretend to be a dog peeing on a hydrant?
That was, I forget his name, is an Ole Miss receiver who did that.
Yeah, as long as that doesn't happen, Ole Miss should win this game, in my opinion. Kiffin doesn't win the big games. This is not a big game this year, unfortunately. It's important impactful for rivalry matchups, but it's going to be viewed because it's on when it is. I think it's close, Chad, because of the game that it represents. I don't think the teams are that close, and quite frankly, I don't know what to expect from the Bulldogs. I know you would have or wanted, you nearly picked against them last week. I don't know what to expect against this Ole Miss team that still has more aspirations than just winning the Egg Bowl.
Well, to be fair to Kiffin, most of his big games are against team where he's at the talent disadvantage.
Sure.
Right, Alabama.
But the hype is with him because of his name.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But this one's a big rivalry, but Ole Miss definitely better. Game number 9. Let's go to the American Athletic Conference.
Let's do it.
Texas San Antonio at number 23 Tulane. Tulane only a 3.5-point home favorite. This game is a great slate of games on Friday. This is one of them. 2:30 Central Time on ABC. Very simple. Winner goes on to the AAC Championship. And if SMU loses to Navy, Hutton, the outcome won't matter. These teams will have a rematch the very next week if Navy's able to pull off the upset in that game. But it's looking like the winner moves on to take on SMU. Loser is out. Frank Harris, he's back for the Roadrunners. Terrific. I think a 7th year for him. 7th year senior at UTSA. And then Michael Pratt, Tulane. Great story also. Tulane trying to play in that New Year's 6 game.
Crazy stat on Tulane. Their defense has not allowed 1,000 yards rushing combined on the season. That's the fewest in their conference by more than, I think, 300 yards. It's nuts. And Frank Harris likes to run the football from the quarterback spot.
Game number 8, Hutton. North Carolina at North Carolina State. The Wolfpack ranked 22nd in the latest college football playoff ranking. This game's at 7 p.m. Central Time Saturday night on the ACC network. But North Carolina, a 2.5-point favorite. This may be the last chance to see Drake May. I don't know that he'll be playing in a bowl game, whatever bowl game UNC goes to. His last chance to shine against a rival. This kind of shows what Vegas thinks about NC State also as a 2.5-point home underdog, as the one team that's ranked in this game. But I really like this matchup.
I do too, and here's why. I don't know what to think of the Tar Heels at the end of seasons now.
Yeah, it was terrible a year ago.
Yeah.
And completely fell apart.
And we've seen losses this year too. So NC State, meanwhile, is
very lucky, by the way, to beat Duke's 4th-string quarterback or 3rd-string quarterback in double overtime recently.
This is very worthy of being in your top 10 just based on what we don't know about Carolina in November in proximity to what we saw last year. And NC State capable of winning at home.
You got a couple teams on my list. We'll get to one later. 2 in the SEC, I think. Really 3 in the SEC that have a chance to change the perception of their program within their own fan base completely with one game. One of those SEC teams, the Kentucky Wildcats. And that's where we go for game number 7. Kentucky at number 10, Louisville. Louisville, a 7-point favorite. This game, 11 a.m. Central Time on ABC. Kentucky leads the Governor's Cup Series all time, 19-15. I feel like these teams have played a lot more than that, but it's 19-15 all time. Kentucky leads it. They just started playing every year relatively recently. Louisville, 1 loss in the season. They're going to play for the ACC Championship next week at home. If Mark Stoops in Kentucky can go there and get their 7th win of the season on the road at Louisville, that's a huge win for that program. I don't think it's going to happen with what I've seen from Kentucky, especially lately, Hutton. But this is always a fun and bitter rivalry game in the Commonwealth.
What happens if Louisville goes on, beats Florida State, and then you have a team like Texas that loses? The craziness. Louisville's going to be the surprise team if you have the craziness over the next 2 weeks. They could sneak in if we're discussing the crazy losses that could come and what the committee might end up having to do based on the championship that Florida State wouldn't have.
Could be some crazy scenarios, no doubt. Another team that's playing for bowl eligibility, game number 6. We go from the Commonwealth to the Palmetto State, South Carolina. Clemson at South Carolina. The Tigers, a 7-point favorite. This game is at 6:30 Central Time on SEC Network Saturday night. South Carolina playing for bowl eligibility. They've been able to survive. They've won 3 games in a row to get to this point, to be 5-6 with a chance at bowl eligibility against their bitter rival, a game Spencer Rattler shined in a year ago on the road and won. And how about this scenario? If Florida, Mississippi State, and South Carolina win this weekend, the SEC will send 12 of their 14 teams to a bowl game. That's second best ever. They had 13 go in 2021. 13 of their 14 win in 2021. But that's what's on the line here in this one. And Hutton, another game that will change the perception for everyone around South Carolina's program if they can get this win at home on Saturday night.
Well, and it changed the perception about where Clemson is.
All that let's buy stock in Clemson right now that Dabo is preaching looks a little bit different if they lose this game, no doubt about it. Game number 5, Texas Tech at Texas. The Longhorns, 7th in the country, Friday night, 6:30 ABC kickoff. Texas can punch their ticket to the Big 12 championship game, but Baron Morton, since he's been inserted in as the quarterback for Texas Tech, this team has looked a lot better. The mid-range passing game is on fire right now. They've won games against TCU, Kansas, and UCF in consecutive weeks. Texas Tech looks a lot better. And remember, Brett Yormark before the season, the pump up speech to the Texas Tech people.
Quarterback club.
What you can do in this game, Hutton. There's some intrigue with that also. And how they could wreck Texas's season.
They could. And Texas has – they've been able to pump the brakes a bit on wrecking their season, even though they have allowed leads to evaporate in recent weeks. Not recently, not last week, but the 3 games leading up to that?
Yeah.
2 games.
I'm going to go pretty quickly through this one, but we got to throw it in there. It's the Iron Bowl.
Yeah.
To me, it's the second best rivalry in college football behind my number 1 game of the week. Number 8, Alabama, 14.5-point favorite at Auburn, down in the Plains. 2:30 Central Time kickoff on CBS. Hugh Freeze at Ole Miss. He liked playing against Nick Saban. He won back-to-back games in 2014 and 2015. But Auburn, coming off that embarrassing 31-10 loss to New Mexico State, they're not going to win unless they get multiple turnovers. They were able to do that against Georgia and give them a scare. In their big wins this season, where they've played close even with good teams, they generate turnovers. They've got to get some turnovers, multiple ones in this game to stay with the Crimson Tide. Game number 3 this week. I love this one. Florida State at Florida. The Noles, a 6.5-point favorite, trying to keep their ability to get in the college football playoff alive. This game is going to be at 6 p.m. Central Time on ESPN. Tate Rodemaker for Florida State. He is the Marcus Outson of this year. If you don't remember that name, Marcus Outson, 1998, he goes down and he beats Florida in a big rivalry game. He stepped in for Chris Winkie that year and then eventually goes on to lose to Tennessee in the national championship game. Can Rodemaker be that guy this year for Florida State? It is Max Brown as the backup for Florida. Brown was okay, 4 for 5, 56 yards, had 42 yards rushing also when he was inserted into the game against Missouri. Huge opportunity for the Gators to wreck Florida State season at home.
What happens with Billy Napier? That's just, I want to see what happens if they lose this game, Chad.
No doubt. Game number 2, Hutton. Oregon State at Oregon. It's a civil war. Number 16, Beavers at number 6, Ducks. 7:30 Central Time, Friday night on Fox. Beavers have to get a pass rush going. They were able to pressure Michael Penix Jr. last week, but did not record a sack in that game. Bo Nix is averaging 400 yards over his last 3 games. 400 yards and 3 touchdowns is his average over his last 3 games. That Oregon offense is humming.
Yeah, and he's not going to give up a 17-point lead, I believe, to last year's matchup in this. Bo Nix can win the Heisman Trophy. Not far-fetched, and I would have never said that to kick off the season.
And Washington has Washington State this week, another honorable mention on the list. Michael Penix Jr. needs to put up some big numbers in that game to really get back where you feel pretty good about him heading into the last couple weeks of the season. Game number 1, there's no disguising it. It's Ohio State at Michigan. Number 2, Ohio State at number 3, Michigan. The Wolverines, a 3-point favorite. Big noon kickoff on Fox. It is winning in to the Big Ten championship game. I mentioned earlier in the show, 2006, the last time this game was this meaningful with 2 undefeated teams. They were 1-2 in the country then. Bo Schembechler had died the day before that game was played. So much at stake in this game, the Hutton. And I'm really curious to see what happens in this one and the emotions between the 2 coaching staffs in this game.
On the field, the game, Michigan, Ohio State. The winner has scored 42 or more points in 4 straight matchups. But it feels like a defensive battle. How much carryover does all the discussion about Ohio State being pushed around the last 2 years matter here? Because if Michigan does it again, Chad, on the offensive and defensive fronts, I don't know how Ryan Day responds at the podium. He won't be responding the same way he called out Lou Holtz. Not going to be any 86-year-olds in that press conference.
Well, is there another old analyst that he can – maybe Lee Corso. Maybe he attacks him this time if they win. Who knows who he's going to go after at that point. Maybe it's Urban Meyer. Urban Meyer will be there, right? Maybe he picks Michigan in this game and he decides to go after his old boss. Who knows?
Michigan.
Who knows who he's going to go after this game?
And then after the 3-game suspension is up, is it up as soon as the clock hits 000? Does that mean Harbaugh can do the press conference?
That is incorrect. He will not be allowed on the premise at
for
Michigan
the 3
for this
games.
Game. Yeah, I think any post game too.
Okay.
He can't do any of that.
I need Tony Petit to
He'll
clarify
rejoin the team on Sunday, and then Monday, maybe practicing for a Big Ten championship, or maybe sitting back and waiting on their bowl destination
I like to imagine
or college
Harbaugh,
playoff.
like, you know how the lawyers after a verdict they leave the courthouse and they do it on the steps of the courthouse.
Yeah.
I like to imagine Harbaugh doing that.
I would love to see him at his home. Just walk out in Ann Arbor to a bunch of press that he's ready to talk at that point. Right? That's his courthouse steps.
Yeah.
Walks right out into his front yard and he does the press conference. Remember when Joe Paterno had to do the impromptu press conferences in his front yard?
Except Harbaugh announces he's back.
A little bit different circumstances there.
Andrea Kremer joins us next as we kick off the final hour of this Wednesday edition.
Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, of our, well, she's not the president, that's Sean Black, but the chairman of the YouTube chat, and she's also the beer captain. She's the captain of beer and IU and partying, our friend Jennifer, a.k.a. Gritty. Gritty, what say you?
Hi, Coach Dockage. It's Gritty, and I was just calling about Caleb Williams wanting to go home and snuggle with his dog after getting beat. If I'm looking to draft a football player, I want to get an alpha male, not a beta male that's going to go home and cry about the loss. An alpha male will go home, work hard, try harder, work on his game plan, and all that good stuff, and not go home and cry to his mommy. Love the show. Peace out.
Ending with a peace out gives me goosebumps because peace out is the way of the world. That's Gritty, and that's right. You know, women want real men. Real men are dying to be real men. I mean, I'm sorry, but they are. Look, I'm not some macho clown. I'm as sensitive as the next guy. I can't get through a movie sometimes without crying. Sometimes somebody does something really nice for me, and I well up. I learned this. Let me show you something that I learned, Gritty. I learned at movies, or when I'm going to cry, to do this. Watch. What I'm doing is I'm blowing up into my eyes, and that dries them so people don't see tears. I get crying, but I don't get crying when you lose a game, jumping up in the stands and crying with your mother. Honest to God, where does the drama end? Where does it end? Look, a friend of mine made a great point. Maybe it was on this show. I can't remember. He said, Doc, 84, minute 18 to go. You turned the ball over against Virginia. We were up 1. All right, they scored, fine. But guess what? I wasn't going to go in there and cry. I mean, I've thought about it every day for 40, 50 years, but I wasn't going to cry. Wasn't going to happen. No chance was I going to cry. I mean, are you nuts? Hell no. Cry to my mom and dad? If I would have run up, it was with Ken Sterling on Two Big Brains. If I would have run up into the stands at the Omni in Atlanta, buried my head in a book, and wept to my mother under the book would have gone, get in the locker room. And my mother's the holiest of women. There is nobody holier than the great Roberta Dockage. There's not. But my father would have gone, oh, crap. My father would have evaluated himself. My father would have said, what did I do to raise this? Which is exactly what I would have done if Andrew D. would have done that when he played at Ohio State or Michigan. Like, they lost to Gonzaga. All right. if Andrew would have had, I guess he played in the game, played about 30 minutes, so I guess he did have a problem, or he didn't help him win, I guess. So there you go. But if he would have come, oh, shut up. I mean, after the game in the hotel, hey, I'm down with that. I'm cool with that. Yeah, privately. But you don't sit there. See, women like Gritty are real women. They're smart. They're beautiful. They're tough. They just get it. They're unafraid. They'll tell guys when they're screwing up. They'll tell guys when they're great.
Just like that, final hour is here. Wednesday edition, Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow across the OutKick network. Andrea Kremer will join us in just a moment as we kick off the final hour after the final Real Sports Chat.
Yeah, one of my favorite shows over the years. 29 years, 19 or 28 years, 1990, 29 seasons. 1995 was when that show started, and I've hit record all for years on my HBO subscription and watched it throughout. So sad to see what is an institution in sports media going away with that show, but terrific final episode that's highlighted, and the most newsworthy piece I think so far out of it was the great Andrea Kremer's profile of Jim Irsay.
Yeah, and you know what we also lack now is the true digging and reporting. So many networks are doing away with that. You know, it's more about entertaining than actual facts and having the daily beat of the days of the Pedro Gomez's following one player gone.
Just watching the at the end of the episode, Bryant Gumbel previewing their look back at the entire series for their Christmas episode to end it all, and the amount of times people are getting threatened, reporters are in situations they're in, facing tear gas. I mean, we're talking about legitimate, hard-level journalism that went on with that show for years and years. Crazy to see all the different situations they've been in.
And a legitimate, hard-level journalist is joining us right now. How would you describe our previous visits with Andrea Kremer, Chad?
Enlightening. Every single time. Andrea Kremer is one of the best at what she does in the business, and her profiles have been one of the highlights of HBO Real Sports over the years. And every single time she knocks it out of the park. She did once again in this latest episode with Jim Irsay, and Andrea is joining us right now. Andrea, really appreciate you taking the time to join us. It aired last night. It's available on demand, streaming everywhere right now for everyone. Great job once again with this profile of Jim Irsay.
Thank you so much, Chad. And I want you to know that only for you, the night before Thanksgiving, when I have 30 people coming to my house tomorrow, and just to share a little bit too much information, one of my goals in life is to never cook a turkey. That's what men are for. Thank God for my husband. I produce Thanksgiving, so I have to have everything perfect, but only for you. That's all I can say.
Well, I thank you for that, Andrea.
I say the same thing for Chad, too, by the way, Andrea. Only for Chad.
Yeah. He only goes on camera for me, too. So we appreciate that. Appreciate you doing this.
But thank you. You've always shown great interest in the work that we've done on Real Sports, and I heard you lamenting a little bit as in the intro. Yes, we just want to go out strong and remind people that there's a huge need for long-form TV sports journalism, and I wish it wasn't our last show of original stories, but we have another show in December, the year-end show with all the correspondents. But the Irsay piece, I'm pretty proud of the effort that our production team did with it.
Well, and I hope the show or some version of a show like that with you, people involved with that, it could have new life elsewhere. There's a lot of different options out there as well. So maybe that will pick up and we'll have more long-form sports journalism that way. Specifically with this Irsay piece, how surprised were you when he said that he was targeted because he is a white billionaire by the police? Because I thought your follow-up questions to that were perfect on that one. And I'm pretty sure you knew that once he said it, because you even told him that, that's what people are going to be talking about after he made that quote.
Well, I was surprised because there's a lot of things, as we know, that people of that ilk may think, but they just don't say it. And I think that that's part of who Jim Irsay is authentically, in that he's going to say what comes into his mind. The filter isn't there. I thought that it was important to point out, anytime from an interviewing standpoint, I know you guys know this, whenever somebody says something and then you repeat their words back to them, you run the risk of them pulling back on it. Well, I didn't really mean that, but I felt that it was important enough to not just make sure that he reiterated what he was saying, but that to address the issue of the implications for it. And as you heard, he doubled down on it. It's what he truly believes. It's the one time in a very lengthy interview that he got extremely animated. He kept really repeating this over and over again, and it's just what he believes wholeheartedly.
So 1987, and you played clips of this. You did an NFL Films profile on a very young Jim Irsay starting out. From 87 to 2023, what was the biggest takeaway in terms of your conversations with him over that span of time?
Well, I'm just glad that I didn't get too much pushback on the 80s hair. And I warned you that I love you, but I'm not putting on makeup today. But boy, 80s hair, woo! What can we say about that? The thing that struck me the most is just how he's aged. It's unbelievable. I mean, to see somebody that was so spry, and then someone who was just really body broken down, and just I can't even imagine what the toll that's taken on him, but you saw it so strongly there. What I think was interesting is that the two themes that were in our story back in 1987 about music and about powerlifting are two themes that led to the breakdown of his body, as well as something that continues to be so hugely important in his life today, which is playing music. And I kind of joke with him at one point. I go, okay, so when we're in your basement in 1987 and you're playing with your pals, are you ever thinking that you're going to be playing before 25,000 people with, Peter Wolf from Jay Giles and Ann Wilson from Hard and John Cougar Mellencamp, that you're going to be the one front and center, the man in black, channeling your inner Johnny Cash at Lucas Oil Stadium or at the Boston Garden or wherever it was? It's quite this trip that he has made. It's really kind of amazing when you look at it.
The memorabilia that he's collected too is incredible. Is there something that he covets that he hasn't been able to pay for and purchase at an auction? And I'm assuming no. And what's the most he spent on something? Yeah, for those who haven't seen it yet, the collection is unbelievable of the music memorabilia, or sports memorabilia for that matter, that he owns.
Movies, everything.
It's sports history and pop culture. That's basically what it is. And you know what? I actually have a list, which I'm not going to be able to pull out in time, of what he did pay for a lot of these items. There are things that are very meaningful to him, whether it's from his childhood or in the case of the Beatles drum set, that's actually in his office. And believe it or not, 2 days before our main sit-down interview, Ringo Starr was in Jim's office, and there he is by his own drum kit. That kind of really blew Jim's mind a little bit. But the collection is believed, he says the collection is worth over $1.1 billion. And he says that based on an offer that he's gotten, that he said he turned down within 24 hours for the collection. I think what's not only is it incredibly eclectic and really interesting, but when Jim performs with his band, the Jim Irsay collection, which is the majority of these artifacts, if you will, travels with him, and it's completely free. You can go anywhere and you get the concert for free, and you get to tour basically this traveling museum that he's created for free, because that's one thing he didn't want people to pay for anything. And let me tell you, can you imagine what it must cost to rent out Boston Garden on a Saturday night?
Goodness.
Because that's what it was when he was in Boston. And again, he's got the garden, so he's got the playing venue, and then throughout the concourses is where all of the memorabilia is located. The Jack Kerouac scroll actually travels with its own caretaker, and that person is the only person allowed to roll it up and unwind it. And even when it's unwound, it's not at its full length. So Irsay takes real care. He takes very good care of the items. They are literally his treasures. And but as we pointed out in our story, in our Real Sports story, the thing that personally is probably the most meaningful to him is the entire collection of Alcoholics Anonymous, the entire bound series of volumes, which he maintains if he had not gone through Alcoholics Anonymous, and still goes to meetings today. And if not for all that, he thinks he would be dead, very simply.
How important was it to you to get Peyton Manning to be a part of this piece? And how gracious was he with his time? Because I thought he added some good light to the relationship of really what was the franchise savior in Peyton Manning that got him his Super Bowl championship with the Colts. And it was interesting with their relationship. And maybe one of the highlights of the piece for me was when Peyton Manning played one of the voice memos that was sent, and he even had the time. He said, "This is a short one; it's only 6 minutes long." that he would send to him.
Minutes long, typically.
Yeah.
So what happened, I think, is interesting. So we were actually sitting in the green room of Lucas Oil Stadium, waiting for the concert to begin. My whole crew and I. My producer Maggie Burbank says, "Why don't we try to get Peyton?" And I go, "Yeah, right. We're going to get Peyton." She goes, "No, why don't we try?" So I subscribe to the theory, ask the worst somebody could say is no. I email Peyton, and I know that the email goes to him directly, doesn't go to one of his handlers. I email him directly, no joke. Within the hour, he emails me back. "I'm in. When do you want to do it? What's your deadline? You'll come to Denver. You want to do it at my office? You want to do it at the Broncos? How much time will you need?" It was amazing. I couldn't believe how all in he was on it. And I think that does speak to the relationship that he has with Irsay, because look, we know that Peyton is running this incredible media empire, but he really does not sit down for one-on-one interviews. So the fact that he did do it for Jim, to talk about Jim in a pretty wide-ranging way, I think is significant. So we finished the interview, and maybe we ran a little bit longer than we might have, especially once we got our walking shot. So Peyton's sitting there on his phone, and I'm assuming he's, because he's pretty busy guy, and I assume he might be texting somebody, "I'm running a little bit late," or whatever. So I go, "Okay, well, Peyton's got to go here." And he goes, "Whoa, wait a minute. I'm looking for a voice memo for you." And I go, "What?" So he pulls out the voice memo, starts playing it. And my producer, I sort of look at my producer, and she goes, "Can we shoot it?" He goes, "Yeah, that's fine." So that's where we got that little scene from. And it was just really funny, because that is who Jim, he loves to leave voice memos. They can be pretty rambling, and we saw it firsthand with Peyton.
Andrea Kremer, our guest, you mentioned earlier to begin, like this, just the importance of long-form journalism and leaving this final season with something to remember for the viewers. What's the next generation, 2 generations from now, Andrea, going to think about long-form journalism as we know it?
Well, the thing that I hope is that they think that it's still really vital, and that it's still an important point of their media consumption. I know that a number of outlets will put bite-sized pieces on a YouTube channel that may link to something longer. And then the premium is placed on making those little bite-sized pieces as tasty as possible, so that you want more. But, look, Jim Irsay had done a number of print pieces, but he'd never done any long form TV. And I think that this is a story that typifies you really want to see somebody. You want to hear their voice. You want to look at their expressions. You want to look in their eyes, or not if they're averting your gaze. And so I think that TV, whatever, does that word even mean anything anymore? Video journalism is still hugely important. And I maybe I'm just a dinosaur. I have to hope that it still has a place and still plays a vital role. And of course, not just sports, but all journalism, general, the idea of speaking truth to power, but that's a whole nother issue. But I just have to hope. I cannot lose hope that long form TV journalism, long form video journalism is going to go away.
Andrea, this may be goodbye to HBO Real Sports. This is not goodbye to you. Thank you so much for being such a great friend to this show over the years, and job well done.
I'm proud of you. Look at you.
And everyone. We got cameras and everything.
Look at you. Come on.
Cameras and everything. It's amazing that they let us in here.
You know what I feel like? Chad? I feel like you're the assistant coach that I always knew when he might have been quality control, and then he becomes a coordinator, and then he's a head coach. And look at you now. Here you are.
I am the John Shire to your Mike Krzyzewski. That is for sure. Andrea, seriously, thank you so much for everything. We're going to have you back on.
Yes.
Again, this is not goodbye. And I know if long-form journalism in sports has a place anywhere, you're going to be a big part of it. So thank you again so much, and great job. We recommend everyone go and watch on HBO right now Real Sports, and especially your profile with Jim Irsay.
And happy
Thanks
Thanksgiving.
again, and happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you so much, guys. To you and all your listeners, stay healthy and have a lovely Thanksgiving. Take good care. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you, Andrea.
Thanks, Andrea. One of the best right there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I love her answer, too. I also have to believe that long-form journalism isn't going to be
There's value in
clickbait,
it. We need everyone to understand the value in it. That's the key. The consumer has to understand the value in it.
Check out the value by checking out this episode of HBO Real Sports.
It's really good.
Coming up, one big thing. On every NFL game for Week 12, we'll kick things off with the 3 games tomorrow for your Thanksgiving. Top Mike with Hutton Withrow across the OutKick Network.
The rest of the world doesn't know this. I have a day drinking day that I have at the owners meeting, and it's Mike Tomlin and I throw it, and it's only for head coaches and GMs. No other media is allowed to come, and the media over time has given us respect. Like, this is Glazer's thing. Let's not go there. And it's usually Tomlin and I and upwards of 30 other guys. It's crazy. But what I also do is I always tell Tomlin and whoever the older coaches are, tell these young cats what's about to come across your desk, because they have no idea. Like, the craziest stories in the world, and you're not prepared for it. Because when you're in that position, you really find out how messed up everybody is. Like, it's not just your players, it's your coaches, it's your scouts, it's your GMs, it's the person in the cafeteria, it's everything. And then it's their family and the issues families are calling. And oh my God. And listen, these cats didn't go to school for this. They didn't go to school to be a psychiatrist, right? They went in the coaching to coach.
Right.
But when you're a head coach or a GM, that's part of the job. The other part is really, it all lands on your shoulders. So I make Tomlin and all the other guys tell the craziest stories that have come across their desk in the early days to prepare the new guys.
Well, and also probably to help normalize everybody else, right? Because we all probably live our lives thinking, oh my God, no one could understand, or no one life is as crazy as mine, or as messed up as mine. And then you hear someone else's story, you're like, wait a second, you have me beat. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there's a couple that I can't tell them on this that are there are we go to them. We usually start these fun days off with these couple stories that there's no way I'll ever repeat, but they are like, Charlie, if you said to me, hey, if I told you any of them, you'd say, come on, you made this up. There's no way this could be possible. And the craziest thing about the NFL is that anything's possible. You know, when we did Ballers, people are like, come on, that stuff doesn't happen in the NFL. I'm like, this is a G-rated version of what happens in the NFL. Are you kidding me?
Okay, you just took me to literally the best segue, because something I remember you saying, and I remember you saying it a few times, the NFL is truly the greatest reality show in the world.
Can't make it up.
And that is what you're talking about, is a testament to exactly why. I mean, there's all these stories that happen, and they're not scripted stories.
Yeah. Look at the Raiders this week. They fired their head coach and general manager at 10 o'clock at night and put in ex-Giant linebacker Antonio Pierce to run the team. Like, look at last year with the Colts. They put in Jeff Saturday. Like, you can't make it up, right? So it's just like it's great because even for me, like I said, with these things, like I think I've seen it all. There was something that happened this year. I said, man, we've seen it all, and then this happened. I don't remember what it. I can't remember what it was.
If you think about it, just
okay, yeah, I can't
break
remember
your thought.
What it was. But like, man, we've seen everything, and then this thing popped up just when you thought you've seen everything, and you really like. That's the thing. If and I've been around. By the way, this is my 30th year, right? Is that? Yep, 31st year. It's my 31st year. My 20th year at Fox. I started covering the league for the New York Post in 95. So I'd make it like, but I started earlier in 93. So that's 31 years. So 95, was it 29 years covering the league. Yeah. So I've seen it all. I've been around. I think I've seen it for the most part. The stuff that's been reported and stuff that hasn't been reported. And yet every year there's still things that surprise me.
Sixth and Peabody, our location with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Happy Thanksgiving to you, Chad.
Happy Thanksgiving to you, Hutton.
We'll be able to give a toast here in a bit.
You know what I'm going to do?
Go ahead.
2 Thanksgiving dinners. All right. Tonight, I'm going to have Thanksgiving dinner at home. For a long time, one of my pet peeves was, no offense to anyone in my family, I've gone to the same place for Thanksgiving every year. But my mother makes the turkey. And then we drive it 40 minutes away to my uncle's house, aunt and uncle's house.
I know where you're going.
And it's never hot. Like, by the time I put turkey on my plate, it's cold turkey with cold gravy on it. And just in the last few years, I said,
doesn't hit the same.
I see all these grocery store commercials and all these holiday commercials, and it's always like the Clark Griswold type dad carving up the turkey, and it's hot, fresh out of the oven, and all the fixings are right there. I'm like, I'd love to have a hot turkey out of the oven and consume it that way, old school style.
It's another thing that Andrea Kremer loves about you.
So,
she's not cooking the turkey.
That's right. Andrea Kremer's husband prepares their turkey. But you know who else prefers her turkey hot? It is Andrea Kremer, just like me. And so the night before Thanksgiving now, we have our own little Thanksgiving feast. This started probably 4 or 5 years ago. So I'm going to double up on Thanksgiving dinners. We'll do one tonight, and then we'll go to the family gathering tomorrow.
Chad, also tomorrow, plenty of NFL flavor. We've got 3 games, divisional matchups. It's time for one big thing on every NFL game for Week 12. No teams on a bye. No, not on Thanksgiving week. 90 games so far this season have been decided by 1 score or less, 8 points or less. Only 2016 and 2022 have had more games decided by 1 score or less entering Week 12 than this week. They're scoring more points in those seasons, though. 3 divisional matchups served up on Thanksgiving Day. We've got another one now on Friday, Black Friday. We've got 7 other divisional matchups Sunday and Monday combined. Thanksgiving Day, Packers on the road against the Detroit Lions. The last time the Lions started 8-2 was way back in 1962. And they improved their record at 8-2 to 9-2 with a win over the Green Bay Packers. The Lions have a chance for a 5th straight victory in this series against Green Bay. And it's the Lions' first game as a favorite on Thanksgiving Day since 2016. Been a while.
How long? How long of a while was it, Hutton? 1962, JFK was still president. Today, November 22nd, 2023 is the 60th anniversary of his assassination. And it was a year before that was the last time we're talking about a Lions team this good.
Detroit 8-0 as the favorite on Thanksgiving over the past 30 years. Commanders hit the road on Thanksgiving. Dallas always hosts. Dallas at 7-3. Washington at 4-7. The Cowboys are seeking their 13th straight home win. The Dallas streak of 12 consecutive home wins, the second longest in franchise history. The longest is 18 games back in the 70s, late 70s, early 80s there. The Commanders, they're the first team to lose a quarterback Tommy DeVito, whose mom still
makes meatloaf?
Makes his bed.
For their son.
I don't know.
Tommy DeVito became the first quarterback to yell in their home, "Ma, the
That's
meatloaf."
my note of the Commanders.
That's it. That's the
What
one.
quarterback has won in the NFL while living in his mom's parents' basement? It's Tommy DeVito.
That would be an amazing stat to find.
beat
What
Washington.
other quarterbacks live with their parents, have won games in the NFL?
Yeah. Not many. Tommy DeVito did. And, who knows what he's named after, Well, maybe it's Tommy Boy, Chad.
Could be.
Maybe it's Tommy Boy. Failure to Launch, also one of his favorite movies. There.
Matthew McConaughey. Very underrated rom-com actor, that Matthew McConaughey. Very
Seahawks hosting the 49ers. 7 of the last 12 NFC championship games are either represented by the 49ers or the Seahawks. It's crazy. Playing for a Super Bowl berth. We're seeing it here. Seahawks just playing for, scratching and clawing to continue to claim their spot, and they're going to be in the playoffs, I think, but where are they going to be seated? 49ers are 2-0 since they've traded and acquired Chase Young, Nick Bosa, and Young combined. Well, they're hitting the quarterback, and they have 2.5 sacks and 5 quarterback hits over the last 2 weeks combined. Brock Purdy joined Joe Montana as the only quarterbacks in 49ers history with a perfect passer rating in a game. And his numbers have been good. He went through that 3-game stretch where he wasn't great, and you had Shannon Sharp saying he's not elite. No one's claiming that he's elite. But he leads the NFL in, completion percentage, also leads the league in yards per attempt. And to put the yards per attempt in perspective, he's at 9.7 yards per attempt. No one else in the league is even above 8.5 yards per attempt. They've got weapons, and Purdy is one of them, believe it or not. Black Friday matchup, Dolphins, Jets. The Jets averaged 9.3 points per game since their bye week. Zach Wilson sacked 19 times in those 4 games. He was benched for Tim Boyle. And this is all you need to know about the Jets. Over the last 3 games, they have almost as many penalties, Chad, as they do points. No wonder Robert Saleh is pleading the fifth on what to do at the quarterback spot.
Hutton, I mainly want to watch this game to see what Black Friday deals are during the breaks with the interactive portion of Prime Video where you can click on it.
Yeah.
And you can only get the deal by doing that. I want to, just in practice, to actually do one of these deals and try to buy it and see the process and how it works. I'm more interested in that than watching the Jets offense.
Saints and Falcons is where we'll start on Sunday's slate. 5-5 against 4-6 divisional matchup. The last 7 weeks of the season could determine the arc of the careers, really, of Arthur Smith and Desmond Ridder in Atlanta. Neither has a winning record during their tenure there, and now they face a team that in New Orleans that should be winning more than they are, especially in this division, and they've had a bye week to prepare for this matchup. It's a big game for New Orleans. New Orleans has won 5 in a row in Atlanta. That's where they'll play on Sunday. Bengals are hosting the Steelers. Are the Steelers actually going to lose to a backup quarterback for the 2nd consecutive week? Cincinnati, they're with Jake Browning now. And they've had a few extra days to prepare for Pittsburgh and that pass rush. We'll see. It's a matchup, though, of 2 teams that lead the NFL in turnover differential. Steelers are plus 11. They're first in the league. And Cincinnati's plus 10, tied with San Francisco. And Matt Canada's finally fired. What does that mean for what we're going to see from Pickett and this offense? Are they going to actually throw and attempt passes? You mentioned Purdy. Are they going to attempt passes longer than 5 yards down the field? Texans and Jags. Chad, 6-4 Houston, hosting 7-3 Jacksonville. for control of the AFC South. The Texans have won 3 straight games. That's the longest streak for them since they won 9 in a row in 2018. This doesn't happen often. They've got the quarterback to do it, though. They keep winning. And the most impressive part is they're doing that when C.J. Stroud is still making some rookie mistakes and issues. He's throwing picks, interceptions, costly turnovers, and specifically when they're coming in games. But then he makes up for it with game-winning drives, 3 straight of those. NFL teams are a combined 11-48 this year when they turn the ball over at least 3 times. The Texans are 2-0. The 31 other teams are 9-48. Calvin Ridley back in the mix there for Jacksonville.
And remember what happened the last time the Texans and the Jags played this season. Was not pretty for Jacksonville.
That's another good point.
Going for 2-0 this year.
Colts are hosting the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Colts are 5-5. Tampa is 4-6. The Buccaneers have lost 5 of the last 6 games. That includes 3 one-score losses. The lack of the running game there is the main problem, at least for me. Tampa, last in the league. They're averaging less than 80 yards per game rushing. Michael Pittman, he's really picked up the pace this year. And what he's doing with Indianapolis is on pace for just what he's done with in the 7 games. 7 games this season of 8 or more receptions. The only other player to do that in Colts history is Marvin Harrison. And maybe we'll see Marvin Harrison Jr. on display, do something like that in the Michigan-Ohio State matchup. By the way, 13 division games, and you've got a bad record here for what we're going to see between Tampa and Indianapolis out of conference. Giants and Patriots, Mac Jones or Bailey Zappi. Mac Jones says it's the plan whenever he was asked if he was going to start. That's the plan, but we'll have to wait until Sunday. The Giants won last week despite the fact Tommy DeVito was sacked 9 times. Chad, beaten up. That's it. Both teams. That's all you need to see here.
Just put this game out of its misery. That's what I think about when I see the matchup of these two teams.
Would you say the same for Titans and Panthers?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I'm hoping this is a quick preview.
It is. The Titans have averaged 12 points per game over this 3-game losing streak. The Panthers 0-5 on the road this year. Titans 3-0 at home. For what it's worth there. Late afternoon kickoffs, Cardinals and Rams. The Rams crushed the Cardinals. 26-9 was the final score back in Week 6. This is the game, though, that actually features Kyler Murray. The Rams are 8-0 against the spread in their last 8 games played in Arizona. Broncos and Browns matchup. Browns are 7-3. The Broncos are at 5-5. 4 straight wins for the Broncos. And it looks like Sean Payton, he's fixed Russell Wilson. He now takes on the Browns defense that is carrying Cleveland without Deshaun Watson or Nick Chubb. Raiders and Chiefs. Raiders somehow remain in the mix. The Chiefs, here's the stat you need to know. This is crazy. The Chicago Bears have scored more points this season than the Kansas City Chiefs.
Whoa.
Look it up if you don't believe me. The Eagles and the Bills. The Eagles and the Bills match up on Sunday. Philadelphia coming into this game on a short week after beating the Chiefs on Monday night. After playing Buffalo in Week 12, the Eagles will have 2 NFC matchups that are massive for that number 1 overall seed. 49ers and then the Cowboys. Josh Allen, he's thrown a pick in 7 straight games. Chargers and Ravens. It's cliche to say this. Turnover battle here. Who wins the turnover battle? Both teams have a knack for converting turnovers into points. The Ravens have scored 61 points off of takeaways. That's 3rd in the NFL. The Chargers have 52 points off of takeaways. And last week for the Chargers, it wasn't necessarily bad coaching or bad quarterback play. It was a 4th down drop, a 3rd down drop, a drop in the end zone, and a drop at the end of the game that might have gone for a 70-yard touchdown. Vikings and Bears, Chad, on Monday Night Football. The Vikings have won 5 in a row in this NFC North rivalry. 3 of those games have been 1-score games. Don't write off Chicago on the betting line here because with Justin Fields back, they're in game. Just ask Detroit this past Sunday. The last time the Bears, though, beat a team with a winning record, Week 5 in 2021 against the 3-2 Raiders. So I'm not saying take the money line here. What I am saying, whatever this line ends up being on Monday, don't let it fool you, even though I would back Josh Dobbs and the Vikings at home on Monday night. That's one big thing on every NFL game for Week 12.
Hutton, is this the final game for Brandon Staley with the Chargers? If they drop to 4-7
against the Ravens at home. See, I thought if you're going to make a change, when do you do it? You normally do it on a week where you have a long weekend. You have some turnover there.
Not on after a Sunday night game?
I don't think so. I think, Chad, it'll be after the season or right before the end of the season. And I'm hopeful for that because I want to see how bad Staley is at handling the heat that's coming his way now.
Yeah, now that
he's been awful.
Now that he's fired off at the mouth in that press conference, I want to see if he continues to double down on all of that.
So which comes first? He gets fired or he's not the defensive play caller? Because he said, I'm calling plays.
Yeah, he's now – he has drawn the line in the sand and said, this is how I'm going out. He's not going to make that move, so they're going to have to fire him. He's not going to hand over defensive play calling responsibilities to anyone else. That's not going to happen.
I've said this week. Herbert is 29-30 overall. And if we're listing quarterbacks, the elite quarterbacks and then that next tier, like the very close, he's right there.
I'd love to see Phillip Rivers' record at the exact same point. 59 games into his career. What was his record?
Yeah,
because that's it's the easy comparison with both of them being Chargers, but the knock with Rivers was really good quarterback that was never great and never had great teams.
But it's you know what though? It's a great comparison because if we're comparing Herbert to the other quarterbacks, that's what we did with Rivers.
Yeah,
he's there with Brady and Manning and Roethlisberger,
and he was never that.
And Herbert's right there
but he's
in the
very
AFC good. With you've got Mahomes and Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen's now down a notch, but not whenever we saw Herbert enter the league. Whenever he entered the league with Trevor Lawrence. Jacksonville or Houston this weekend, Chad?
I'm going to look it up. I'm going to go Houston.
Houston at home?
To get the sweep. Yeah, I think Houston wins at home.
We've got Wrong Team Favored coming up for college football. Pick some winners. Davey's on a roll. Chad's got,
I'm going to roll too. It's just the reverse. Yeah. I'm going in reverse. I'm going down the hill.
It's hard to go winless in this too.
I'm in neutral sliding back.
You have to try.
I'm the Lions, baby. I'm going perfect in reverse.
What you're experiencing is the bold taste of a Southern legend. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey, authentic Tennessee mountain-style spirits. We believe in crafting flavors that were born from tradition but defy expectation. And pioneering a new experience with every sip. Because if it doesn't do this, it ain't this. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Come on.
Welcome into OutKick the show. I am Clay Travis, your fearless leader.
I am going to continue to argue that sports is one of the great unifying forces in all of American life.
ESPN is a sinking ship. Democrats are now the party of the white, woke college graduate.
We live in a land of participation trophies.
You gotta lean into the turns. You really gotta lean into the turns.
When Leah Thomas walked in that first day, it got silent, and every girl was uncomfortable.
Very difficult to go back-to-back years in the NFL with the #1 overall pick.
Is it fair for people to be upset with Barbie?
I've been out of LA long enough to have forgotten that libs, no matter how ridiculous the scenario, are gonna lib. Another week of inflation, another week with Biden with COVID, and another set of losers to crown. People don't watch the WNBA on TV, in person, on a plane, on a train, on a bus, or on purpose. I mean, what have you seen firsthand of how this has affected you in the plant and your fellow employees? Under Joe Biden, the Taliban has retaken Afghanistan. Putin has invaded Ukraine. So if there was ever a time for freaking aliens to inhabit and conquer Earth, now would be that time.
carjacking. We've seen coaches throw water bottles. We've seen coaches act like idiots. We've seen coaches slap other coaches. But I think if you're involved in carjacking, you're inherently a rotten human being. The level of stupid that sometimes gets on our YouTube chat just gives me a headache. You're born a male, play with males. You're born a female, play with females. Don't at me about it. The American people are being cheated. We, ladies and gentlemen, are being cheated.
I made the call to end the Me Too movement, and today I'm going to continue making that case.
And that's just a way to further taunt these women, to make them feel less than, to make them realize that this has just become a big joke. Deion Sanders is the Donald Trump of football.
We were directly impacted by the whole Leah Thomas thing, and we were able to see you guys on the ground with your signs supporting. That was huge.
They were saying, oh, it's only 1 or 2. That's rubbish, and we all know that's rubbish. Once those trans-identifying males were able to succeed, it just encouraged others.
Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. A bold taste of the Southern Legend.
Sixth and Peabody, our location with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow rolls on. Short week, getting into the Thanksgiving Day festivities tomorrow. And Chad, hopefully the week has been as fast-paced
It's been
for
fruitful.
our viewers and listeners as much as it has been for us.
It's been a fruitful week, Hutton. Bountiful, much like our Thanksgiving feast.
What do you, I want to get into this first.
Let's do it.
Ohio State, Michigan.
Okay.
What actually happens in this game to where we stop talking about the sign stealing? Is it just a simple loss, or is there more to it than that? Here, I guess here's what I'm getting at.
I don't think we're going to stop talking about it regardless of what happens.
But if they lose and they don't make the college football playoff, if they're not representing the Big Ten, whatever you want to say here, do the leaks stop trickling out about this story? Because I think it slows down a bit if they lose and they're not in the mix for the championship. I do think the NCAA had Tony Petitti's ear in this. I do.
Maybe it slows down. I don't think it stops anything. I don't think anything's. I think this game is just going to confirm one side's victory in all of this, one way or the other. Michigan wins. The argument is, told you it wasn't that big of a deal, told you it was overblown, didn't even need your signs, won with an interim head coach.
Ohio State sucks.
If
That's
Ohio
their
State wins,
flag.
it's you cheated to get the last 2 wins, and you've cheated the last few years, and that's why you've been as good as you've been.
But the narrative
argument.
with Ryan Day will be, okay, now beat Michigan with Jim Harbaugh on the sideline.
and
that will continue.
Can we go ahead
that will be massive.
Ohio State's not winning this game.
No, I don't think so either.
So
I agree. You know where I stand on this. I don't think Michigan's losing this game.
I think Michigan's the better team. I think Michigan's going to win this game, and it's just going to lead to more disappointment from Ohio State with Ryan Day, head to head, but not even head to head because Jim Harbaugh's not going to be on the sideline for this game. So it's going to look. There's going to be a lot of uncomfortable feelings from both sides, from the losing side of this, regardless.
I got one other segue with this matchup, but I'm bringing Davey on just the feel and the tenor of if Ohio State wins versus Michigan. What do you think, Davey?
Well, I just wanted to add that if Ohio State does win, Ryan Day's not going to have to worry about the Jim Harbaugh being on the sidelines moving forward because he's not going to be back. And even if he was, I would anticipate he's probably going to be suspended next year. So you're pushing that, or you're kicking that can down the road for another 2 years. I just don't see that happening. I think Michigan's ultimately going to win. They're just going to be more physical, but I would like to see Ohio State win this just because I think that will generate some more interesting storylines.
So one final question, because I want to bring it up before the game happens. Marvin Harrison Jr., if he goes off in this game, is he going to win the Heisman Trophy? I think he will. And I've been saying this for weeks. Wait until think about the voters here. There are 900 plus of them, and every one of them will be watching this game. And none of them really has a consensus on which quarterback they're voting for.
If he does go off and then has an incredible Big Ten championship, I could see that. But, I mean, you would need an epic level of play for both these next two games for him.
Yeah, I'm going to see the odds right now where
he's
he
plus
ranks
4,000 on DraftKings.
Well, he's like 4th or 5th in the odds, though, I believe. He's right there. And some of these quarterbacks are not going to be playing next week.
He is. I'm at BetMGM right now. He's 4th.
Okay.
Bo Nix plus 110, Jaden Daniels plus 140, Michael Penix Jr. plus 500. Huge drop-off to Marvin Harrison Jr. plus 3,000.
And a huge drop-off from Marvin Harrison Jr. to those quarterbacks as far as eyeballs for voters this weekend.
Yeah, I think it's going to be one of those top three in the end. It's going to be my vote.
See, I think that they could vote. They could cancel each other out, and then you still have Harrison Jr. that gets enough first-place votes just based on this. Plus, he's playing for the team that everyone consensus-wise just no dog in the fight. If you don't like what Michigan's been doing, you want to see Ohio State win, and that's how they win is with him.
I think that there's going to be some people that if he's the one that single-handedly goes crazy and defeats Michigan, that's going to be kind of the justice vote that has a problem with Michigan, that says a Heisman voter, hey, this guy ended Michigan's unlawful reign, so I'm going to go for it's going to be some of that.
You're right.
But I think ultimately it'll be one of those three quarterbacks. I'm rooting for Michael Penix Jr. to be the guy.
We saw a quarterback win it by default last year. I think we could see the same thing at wide receiver.
I mean, just let's take a second also, because we're talking about all the big games, and we should be. Caleb Williams won the Heisman Trophy a year ago, came back, was on an offense that averaged 44 points per game, and they went 7-5. 7-5. That is awful.
Not many people are talking about it.
No one could have expected that from Lincoln Riley in year two. That's just crazy.
Also crazy is the fact that Chad could go winless in our competition for wrong team favorite. He's not.
It looks far worse when I see you guys' record. This is not an easy game to pick an outright winner with a point spread. But the fact that Davey's 5-7 and you're 7-5, those are also. Granted, my record is horrendous. You guys have really good records for this competition. I just want that on the record. We're talking records right now. I want on the record that you guys have done exceptionally well, while I have not won a single game.
I've been close recently. You've been close recently, but I'm not.
I've been close the last 2 weeks.
I'm not picking outright winners recently.
I lost on a last minute-and-a-half touchdown for 27 points this past week, and I lost for 10 points on a last-second field goal the week before.
So I realize both quarterbacks are out in the game I'm picking here, but wrong team favored for me. I'm going with Florida, and they're right now plus 6.5 at home against Florida State. Just because I don't know how FSU responds without Jordan Travis. If they win out, I'm sitting here saying they should be in the college football playoff. But I don't think they will be unbeaten. And it's because of Jordan Travis being out. Yes, I'm predicting and projecting how they'll be without him. They have a chance to prove us wrong, and we can't project how they'll be in the college football playoff by winning 2 games. But I've seen Florida play well recently. I'm surprised by that, by the way, about how they competed against Missouri.
And their offense has looked better. It's looked good.
But also down their quarterback. So I'm taking the Gators at home. I'm taking Billy Napier, which scares me a bit. They went outright against their rival, the Seminoles, and they stake their flag into the fact that Napier's back and there's no controversy moving forward.
So is it my turn to pick my loser for this week to go to 0-13? South Carolina's at home. I think Shane Beamer, he has this uncanny ability of sort of pulling the rabbit out of the hat when you're least expecting it. when you think things aren't going great. That was an ugly game against Kentucky, but they find a way to win at home. I still don't think Clemson's that good. I think they're more talented, but this game is in Columbia. They're going to have a decided home field advantage. That place can get really loud. I like the 7 points for South Carolina and winning at home and getting bowl eligible for a third time in 3 seasons for Shane Beamer. I think they win at home and get bowl eligible again.
Are we allowed to just put on the record the game you wanted or initially had a gut feeling about?
My initial gut feeling was, and this was in the go big or go home category.
And you said, I just have a feeling.
Was Vanderbilt over Tennessee for 27. But the more I really looked at it, I thought, man, Vandy has not shown much at all this season. And while Tennessee has looked really bad the last couple of weeks, they have run the ball against mediocre to bad competition consistently throughout the year. I would kind of expect that to happen again in this game. But I am glad that we've got this clip now. So if Vandy beats Tennessee, you guys know, and now everyone else knows, that was my initial pick for wrong team favorite.
Funeral service on Monday.
Well, if we're going for things we think might happen that is not our official
I think we should
pick,
draft 3, and then we just, if any of them hit, we take the winner.
Davey's been on a roll here.
I've been fortunate. I will agree with that. I do think
So
one of
humble. So humble, Davey.
Yes.
Been very fortunate.
You need to watch out for goes out to the Pac-12. And the first 2 teams I will mention, I'm not picking these, but I'm just saying, you got the Civil War, Oregon and Oregon State. I think something crazy is going to happen there. And then you got the Apple Cup, Wazoo versus Washington. We'll see. But I'm actually going with the territorial. I think that's what they call this rivalry, the territorial rivalry. Arizona State versus Arizona. I've got Arizona State. They're 10-point dogs. I think Kenny Dillingham's going to be able to get it done. And the word is we could see Jaden Rashada return for them. You know, the quarterback, we talk about his time where he accepted like an $11 million NIL deal to go to Florida. Things went south with that. He ended up ultimately at Arizona State in Tempe. Arizona also just struggles in Tempe. They've not won a game there since 2011. And outside of last year, Arizona State had won 5 straight. I think it's going to be a closely contested game. It's one of those you throw out the records when these 2 teams meet. But Arizona will ultimately lose to the Sun Devils. And so that's why I am going with Arizona State plus 10.
I like Arizona State there.
You guys like
That's
my
a strong
pick?
10.
Or am I going 0 for 13?
I think you're going 0 for 13.
Yeah.
You got to win outright.
Yeah, I got to win outright.
I think
Shane Beamer's got to get it done.
Yeah, I think Clemson's going to be motivated this year.
Can I give you another one that I like?
Due to the sign stealing allegations.
Someone in here said it too. For a big one, I like BYU at Oklahoma State, 17.5.
They treated you well last week. They didn't win outright, but they treated you well.
Big difference, though, in Provo versus away from Provo. But I thought about that one, too.
It's a Friday
I think
game,
it was
right?
Colin who mentioned that one.
Was it a Colin? Was it Friday?
It was a Colin special.
I think that one's actually Saturday. I think Oklahoma plays Friday.
Time for NFL Eliminator. Davey's got the first pick this week, and he suffered a recent loss, but we all won in Week 11. Headed into Week 12, we got some Thanksgiving games and some teams that will be featured here.
Yeah, real simple. Guys, I'm going with the Dallas Cowboys. They're a 12.5-point favorite over the Washington Commanders. I just don't like what I see from Washington. I know it's a divisional matchup, but I think the Cowboys will be able to handle them, and so it'll probably be close. I would probably take Washington to cover, but that's not what matters here, and boys are going to get the W on Thanksgiving.
Give me the Ravens on the road against the Chargers. Staley is being defensive about his defense. I can't wait to see what he says about what Lamar Jackson ends up doing.
He's going to be very defensive about that defense when Lamar carves them up.
Yes.
Boys, I would take the Detroit Lions if they sucked on Thanksgiving Day. This is a team that shows up on Thanksgiving no matter what almost every single year. Even for most years where the Lions are terrible, it's always a compelling Thanksgiving Day. They're better than the Green Bay Packers. They get it done at home. Give me my Detroit Lions for the win. Something that I've actually won at this year, the Eliminator picks, unlike wrong team favored.
NFL moneymaker lock for me, take the Panthers +4. That's as it sits right now. Both teams love the field goal, especially the Tennessee Titans, who couldn't even get one last week. They settle for those. It's a field goal game either way. And I believe Will Levis returned to practice today. He did not practice yesterday. There's a storyline there, but we could see Levis and Bryce Young face off on Sunday. We likely will. And give me the points there for the Carolina Panthers as my lock.
I got a bet before the season started. Titans -1. Should I cash out?
Oh, you can take that.
Okay.
They could win on a last-second field goal. Nick Folk is good from 50.
Yeah, they're going to get a big-time field goal game in that one. Black Friday game, give me the Dolphins -9.5. This thing is not going to be competitive. I think that's a low line, quite frankly, even though Jets defense really good. Timmy Boyle, not going to get it done. Probably better than Zach Wilson, though. But give me Dolphins -9.5, winning by double digits.
Guys, I'm going to go with the Raiders +8.5. I mean, Hut, you gave some great stats in your one big thing about how the Chiefs have really struggled to score. And if that's the case, it's going to be a low-scoring affair, and I anticipate the Raiders being able to make it a one-possession game. They're not winning, but they will cover. Raiders +8.5.
Tim Boyle in college, in his 19 games over 3 years, 1 touchdown, 13 interceptions. His stats at UConn.
It's not
they're
ideal.
benching Zach Wilson.
Not ideal.
Zach Wilson at BYU, a bit better than that.
Yeah,
Tim can probably take the field without falling
Tim
down.
Boyle's always I think Tim Boyle started for the Lions one year on Thanksgiving Day, Chad. Probably you probably
I think you're right.
You probably bet with the Lions with Tim Boyle.
I think Timmy Boyle won me some money one Thanksgiving Day with the Lions.
Thankful for all of our viewers, listeners, all of you season ticket holders to Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow. Thanks to the crew here in Nashville as well. Always getting done. Chad, cheers.
Cheers.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Thankful for all you guys. Have a great, blessed Thanksgiving. We'll be back at it on Monday, right?
We are.
We're back
3
Monday.
o'clock Eastern
We'll be
right
back
here
Monday
on the OutKick Network.
Cheers, everyone.